In addition to bringing you the Thom Hartmann program here on Free Speech TV and Video Media Online, we also have a whole set of ways you can interact with us and tools you can use to spread the word about the importance of democracy and the threats to it in our republic. First, there's your daily homework. Sue Nethercutt puts together a daily email newsletter that has a link to every story I discuss on the air, so you can find my sources and you can share them with your friends. It's free and you can sign up at thomhartmann.com. Second, I publish my daily take every day over at the hartmannreport.com website. That's also free if you want the daily 5 days a week rant in your inbox. No ads either. Third, we have the podcasts. There's the free 1-hour version of our daily show that's advertising supported. You can find that wherever you get your podcasts normally. And then there's also the podcast of the entire 3-hour show with no advertisements, and that's available by subscription over at thomhartmann.com. So check them all out at thomhartmann.com and hartmannreport.com.
We say fight back!
Our book in the Thom Hartmann Book Club is The Cabinet, George Washington and the Creation of an American Institution by Leslie M. Chervinsky. This is from the introduction. At 11:30 in the morning on August 22nd, 1789, a large cream-colored coach pulled up to the front door of Federal Hall, 6 Wall Street in New York City. 6 matching, perfectly groomed horses pulled the elegant carriage with sparkling gold trim. The coachman, outfitted in crisp white and red trimmed livery, jumped down from the back of the carriage and opened the door. An elegantly dressed man with powdered hair stepped down with a portfolio of papers under his arm. He towered over his companion, Henry Knox, the acting Secretary of War, and his slaves attending to the horses. His ornate coach and his imposing presence drew curious stares from strangers passing by on the street. He walked up to the front door of Federal Hall and was immediately announced George Washington, the first president of the United States, had arrived for his first visit to the United States Senate. This was no ordinary meeting. 2 years earlier, the delegates at the Constitutional Convention in Philadelphia had agreed that the Senate would advise and consent on treaties and other questions of foreign policy. But in practice, how the president and the Senate would interact remained for the first office holders to work out. Washington's relationship with the Senate was just one of countless governing details that he had to establish as the first president. Establishing precedent for every presidential action consumed his thoughts in the first few years of his administration. Not only would the American public and international audience judge his every action, but his successors would be guided by his choices. The stakes could not have been higher. The future of the republic rested on Washington making the right decisions. He approached every new situation with caution and took action only after consulting with his advisors. His first visit to the Senate was no different. The tense relationship between Native American nations and the United States posed an immediate challenge after Washington's inauguration on April 30th, 1789. Most Native American nations had sided with the British during the Revolutionary War, recognizing the threat that American settlers posed to native lands. On November 15th, 1789, representatives from the national government, North and South Carolina, the Creeks, and the Cherokees planned to meet to discuss the controversial treaties signed between 1783 and 1789 and to negotiate a new treaty. Washington had to select the representatives to send on behalf of the federal government, another important first for the new president. At his August 22nd meeting, Washington planned to seek advice about what instructions he should give to the commissioners. Because he considered Native American relations to fall under the heading of foreign policy, he followed the constitutional guidelines calling for him with the Senate. On May 25th, 1789, less than a month after his inauguration, Washington sent to the Senate all of the United States' previous treaties with Indian nations, along with a number of supporting documents. After a brief discussion, the Senate postponed its consideration of these papers. At the beginning of August, the Senate created a committee to meet with Washington. That committee planned the minute details of the upcoming meeting, down to where Washington would sit and how he would enter the chamber. On August 20 and 21, Washington nominated commissioners to negotiate with the Southern Indians. On August 21st, he sent an official note to the Senate announcing his visit the next day to discuss the terms of the proposed treaty. When Washington and Knox arrived at Federal Hall at 11:30 a.m., the doorkeeper announced their arrival. Washington sat at the front of the chamber, and Knox took the chair to the right. Washington handed his remarks to Knox, who in turn handed them to Vice President John Adams. Adams read the statement, but as Senator William Maclay from Pennsylvania recalled, the senator, quote, could not master one sentence of it, end quote. Adams was not known for his public speaking skills, but the senator's struggles weren't entirely his fault. The Senate gathered for their work in the large chamber that occupied the first floor of Federal Hall. Because of the August heat in New York City, the doorkeeper had opened the windows in search of a cooling breeze. But along with fresh air, noise, Wall Street's pedestrians, carriages, peddlers, and horses flowed into the Senate chamber. The clamor overpowered Adams' voice, so few senators could make out the words that Washington had so carefully crafted. After a few complaints, Adams repeated the speech from the beginning. Washington's remarks offered a brief synopsis of the current diplomatic state between the United States and the Southern Indians and posed 7 questions for the Senate to answer with an aye or a no. Adams finished his recitation and sat. The seconds ticked by as the senators remained in awkward silence. A few shuffled papers or cleared their throats. Maclay speculated in his diary that his colleagues were so intimidated by Washington's presence in the Senate chamber that they cowered in shameful silence. Eager to show that they could be active participants in the creation of foreign policy, Maclay stood up and suggested referring the Washington's 7 questions to committee for discussion in detail. Washington then lost his temper, stood out at, "This defeats every purpose of my coming here." The senators fell into a stunned hush before Washington acquiesced to Maclay's suggestion and offered to return to the Senate a few days later. Although he did not return to the following Monday, his first visit to the Senate was an inauspicious the executive-legislative relationship. The book is The Cabinet by Leslie M. Chervinsky.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
Hey, happy Thanksgiving. It is the day before, and I am thankful for, of course, for my family and for the life that I've had, to my parents for bringing me into this world and the community, for our nation. I'm thankful in particular for the people who are standing up to Donald Trump, and I'm thankful to you for listening and watching and reading and the work that I do every day, and our team. I'm thankful for my team, for Sean and Nate and Jeremy and Mateo, who are all here right now, and Chase, our engineer, and Louise, who does so much work on this program, Nigel and Sue in the UK, who work with this program every day and keep up Tom.tv, and all the folks who have volunteered in our chat room and everything. So anyhow, thank you in my Thanksgiving. And what are you thankful for? We can talk about that today. Let's talk about a bunch of other things too. What happens when an AI bubble blows up Wall Street? I got to tell you about just an amazing article in the Wall Street Journal and the Financial Times, for that matter. And in fact, there was a piece in the New York Times about this today. Also, what happens when Trump officials decide that the courts don't matter? We'll get to that in just a moment. Democratic senators have filed a Freedom of Information request demanding answers about the Tom Homan controversy. The FBI recorded him taking that $50,000 apparent bribe, cash in a brown paper bag. What's up with that? Also, by the way, KBCS is hosting me at Town Hall Seattle with special guest Katie Wilson on Saturday, December 6th. She will definitely be there, and I will be there too. I'm really looking forward to it. I'll be discussing my new book, The Last American President, and talking about the issues of the day. There'll be a Q&A and a book signing. To the best of my knowledge, this is the only opportunity going forward for anybody anywhere in the country to get an autographed copy of my new book. You have to get tickets. This is a fundraiser for KBCS, and their website is which is our Seattle station. It's a nonprofit station, and the website is KBCS BCS, not like the network, which is the opposite, but kbcs.fm. So, and I'll see you there. In the second hour of our program today, Phil Ittner is going to drop by. We'll find out what's going on, what's the latest out of Ukraine. And also, in fact, I think he's back in the U.S. for Thanksgiving. It might be a little less stressful for him. Also, this is another story that's going all over the place, and it's going to crush the Republican Party. This person's saying, my premium just skyrocketed to $2,600 a month. For the first time in my adult life, I'll have no insurance. We'll talk about that. Also, geeky science in defense of dirt, rewilding our children before their bodies forget. And in the third hour of our program, our single guest, our one guest for the day, or actually our second guest with Phil Ittner, is Sabrina Haake is going to drop by. She publishes the Haake Take about the Bondi-Halligan smackdown and Kristi Noem. We want to dig back into that. And also in the third hour, has Montana figured out how to crush Citizens United? We had a couple of discussions about this yesterday, the day before, with callers. And so I did my homework. I'm ready to tell you all about it and what we should all be doing. As I mentioned yesterday, this is something I've been wanting to write about for some time. But to kick it off, my op-ed today over at HartmannReport.com, you know, my daily take is titled, What Happens When the AI Bubble Blows Up on Main Street? And what got me started on this was this article that I read in the Financial Times yesterday. In fact, I read it yesterday morning and thought about putting it on the show. You know, I read it yesterday morning at 5:30 in the morning, and because it had just popped up. And the Financial Times is one of the 5 or 6 newspapers that I read every morning when we are trying to figure out what to talk about on the show. And I thought, well, you know, maybe I can come back to this tomorrow, and which is what I'm doing right now. And yesterday afternoon, when I started digging into it, I discovered that it was a whole lot bigger than I thought. The headline in the Financial Times was, NVIDIA shares fall on signs Google gaining upper hand in AI. Now, what's consequential about this, NVIDIA has become, like, you know, the most expensive company in the world. It has a market valuation right now of $5 trillion. I mean, that's more than the GDP of most countries, right? Probably well over half the countries in the world. And it's massive, $5 trillion. And it's all because they make this chip, this very super sophisticated chip that is capable of powering, it's so powerful it can power AI data centers. And meanwhile, we've got these data centers being built out all over the United States. This whole AI frenzy and all these data centers and all this construction, and it's driving up the stock market, virtually every other sector of our economy, because of Trump's tariffs and because he's such a lousy president, such a lousy manager of our government. He's got incompetent, you know, just absolute idiots in charge of major federal agencies. He's doing deregulation like there's no tomorrow. He's selling off our oil. I mean, it's just, I could go on, but what it's doing is it's damaging our economy. He's laying people off. He's firing federal employees. He's harassing companies. I mean, just all kinds of crazy stuff. And so basically every sector of our economy is in recession except the part that's associated with AI. This is a classic bubble. This is what had happened with housing in 2008. This is what happened with the dot-com stuff in the late 90s. And in both cases, you know, we've seen this movie before. In both cases, when those bubbles burst, it wasn't the banksters who went down. Now, by the way, this is the same thing that happened back in the 1980s. Early on in the Reagan administration, they got this bright idea, hey, we should deregulate the banking sector. right? Because they were taking the Republicans, you know, it was a brand new Republican administration, 1981, and they were taking a lot of money from the big banks. And so they thought, hey, let's deregulate the banking sector. Well, if we're going to do it, let's start with the smallest part of the banking sector and see how it works. So they deregulated the savings and loan industry and said, you guys can now, you know, gamble with your people's money, and you know, you can do all kinds of weird stuff if you want, and mergers, and we'll just, you know, we're going to deregulate you. And what happened? I forget the year, it was during Reagan's presidency, but the S&L industry just imploded. I mean, we had literally hundreds of these organizations across the United States, these banks, go bankrupt. They just got wiped out. And now there is a savings and loan equivalent of FSLIC, of the Federal Savings Loan Insurance Corporation, that, you know, backstops savings and loan deposits up to $250,000. So, you know, the government was on the hook for this, and it cost us a fortune, you know, hundreds of billions of dollars to bail out these S&Ls. So the Reagan administration prosecuted over 3,000 bankers. Over 1,000 went to jail. I mean, let that sink in. This was Ronald friggin' Reagan. 1,000 bankers went to prison. But when the bubble burst in 99 and 2000, you know, Bill Clinton was a little more charitable, and George Bush decided he wasn't going to do anything about it. And then when the bubble burst in 2008, George W. Bush was very clear that no bankers were going to go to jail. Instead, they took home, I mean, we bailed them out again, right? And what did it do? It wiped out neighborhoods, towns, communities, pension plans. People lost their pensions. They had to, you know, I mean, just it all, the average person. So anyhow, all this is going on, you know, with this bubble burst. And then the huge story comes. You know, the NVIDIA chips are like, you know, a zillion transistors on a chip, right? But and then you put a bunch of chips on a circuit board, and then you put the circuit board in a box with a power supply, and you've got a processor, a computer, right? And then you stack 1,000 of these things in a bunch of racks, or maybe 100,000 of them, and in a 100,000 square foot building, and you've got a data center. Well, this was the new piece in the Wall Street Journal. The headline: the microchip era. Now, a microchip has millions of transistors on it, right? The microchip era is about to end. The future is in wafers. Data centers will be the size of a box, not vast energy hogging structures. So right now, the way they do it, they make these chips on wafers. They're about the size of a compact disc, and there's maybe 30 or 40 little chips that are kind of burned into it, and then they cut them into little squares, and then they put the wires on the chips and put them into microchips, right? Well, this company has figured out how to make a microchip that is the size of a wafer, that on one wafer has the power of hundreds of computers. Hundreds. Well, this is the actual quote from the Wall Street Journal. Cerebras of Palo Alto, California, used the concept in its WSE3 wafer scale engine. The WSE3 boasts some 4 trillion transistors, 14 times as many as NVIDIA's Blackwell chip, with 7,000 times the memory bandwidth. Cerebras inscribed the memory directly on the wafer rather than relegating it to distant chips and chiplets and high bandwidth memory mazes. The company stacked up its wafer scale engine 16-fold, thereby reducing a data center to a small box with 64 trillion transistors. So a 600,000 square foot building that requires a billion watts of energy every day has become something the size that will fit in this office that is the size of this desk, and you can plug into the wall. Or maybe you'll need 220, but it's not anything special. And this is not an idea. They're on the verge of rolling this out in production. When this kind of, I mean, this is Moore's Law. Moore's Law, you know, from 1965, Gregory Moore, I think his name, or no, Douglas Moore, who was an engineer at Intel. He was one of the co-founders of Intel. He said, you know, every 2 years, the number of transistors on an integrated circuit is going to double, and the cost is going to cut in half. And he was right, and it's still happening. So when Moore's Law hits the data centers, all of this frenzy of construction, it's all going to collapse. Now, I don't know if that's going to happen next month or if it's going to happen next year, if it's going to happen in 4 years. I don't know. But I think we can safely predict it's coming. And, as I said in my article, in a future article and a future commentary, we'll get into this next week, I'll talk about what this means for the politics. Because what we could be looking at is a second Republican Great Depression, or at least a serious crash. Now, the billionaires love these crashes because they're buying opportunities. This is when billionaires make their biggest money, is during crashes, as I've told you many times before. But my message to you is batten down the hatches, get ready.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
I would add, never take investment advice from me, and this is not investment advice. I'm just telling you, this is the way the wind is blowing. Everybody's talking about it in the financial press. And welcome back, Byron in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. Hey, Byron, what's on your mind today?
Yeah, Tom. Happy Thanksgiving. But
Thank you.
I wanted to ask you. Yeah, I'm assuming you're aware that they tried Medicare for all in the state of Vermont.
I am.
And they said it didn't work out. And I was wondering if you knew why it didn't work out, and if so, why do you think it would work on a national level if it didn't work on a state level?
Sure. The reason it didn't work in Vermont is because Vermont has a population of 650,000 people, roughly, and some huge number of them. And I lived in Vermont when they tried this experiment, and I'm sorry, I don't recall the number of people who are on Medicare in Vermont, Medicare and Medicaid, but my recollection is it was well over 100,000. So there's a lot of retirees and a lot of people who are on Medicaid, low-income people. It might have been over 200,000. And those federal dollars come into Vermont, through the federal government, even though they're administered by, at least the Medicaid is administered by the state of Vermont. The Medicare is independent of the state of Vermont. That's just between Vermont people and the federal government. So when they went with Medicare for all, the way the law is constructed right now around Medicare and Medicaid, it would have cut off all of that money from Medicare and Medicaid that was going to Vermont. So Vermont itself would have to raise their taxes radically to pay for the people who otherwise were getting federal funds for Medicare and Medicaid. And it would have just broken the state. So what they did is they applied to the government, to the federal government, and this was during the Bush administration. They applied to the federal government for a waiver. They said, can we have a waiver, and you can continue to pay our Medicare people and you can continue to pay our Medicaid people, or pay us and we'll pass the money out to Medicaid and we'll just roll it into our single payer system. And the Bush administration said, no, we won't do that. You're going to have to force Congress. You're going to have Congress do that. And so every year since then, Democrats have introduced legislation in Congress to make these waivers available to states, so that any state that wants to do a single payer system can do it very easily by, because they won't have to worry about also suddenly having to use state tax dollars to pay for Medicare and Medicaid recipients who were before getting federal tax dollars. But so far it has not passed. The Republicans are absolutely opposed to it. And there are some Democrats who are opposed to it too, because a Medicare for all system in the state puts the insurance companies out of business. So that's what happened, Byron.
This problem wouldn't exist if it was on the federal level, the Medicare for all.
That's correct. And it would not exist on the state level if the federal government could continue to pay, cover the cost of Medicare and Medicaid, of people who are on Medicare and Medicaid.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate it. I wanted to ask you, what's your opinion of the Meta Advantage plans versus the original Medicare plans? It's something I'm eligible to sign up for, and I'm not sure which way to do it.
Medicare Advantage plans are scams. There's a couple. The only one that I know of that is even reasonable is the one that's run by Kaiser Permanente, because they're a nonprofit, and they've got a really large system. But beyond that, the Medicare Advantage plans are scams. When you get sick, they start. In fact, United Healthcare just dumped hundreds of thousands of people off their plans because they weren't profitable. So in the beginning, it looks great. Hey, the cost is low, and I get all these benefits. But once you start getting sick, which happens as you age. It's going to happen to all of us. Suddenly they stop paying for things, they start refusing to pay for things, and ultimately they'll kick you off the plan, and then you're really screwed. So stay away from Medicare Advantage is my recommendation. Byron, thanks for the call. Missed my opening rant today? It's usually published over at HartmannReport.com, where you can read it and share it with your friends for free. Check it out, HartmannReport.com. Donald Trump lost, voter suppression won in 2024. That's the headline over at HartmannReport.com, and just a brilliant article written by Greg Palast, exclusively for the Hartman Report. He writes, Trump lost, that is, if all legal voters were allowed to vote. If all legal ballots were counted, Trump would have lost the states of Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Georgia. Vice President Kamala Harris would have won the presidency with 286 electoral votes. And if not for the mass purge of voters of color, if not for the mass disqualification of provisional and mail-in ballots, if not for the new mass vigilante challenges in swing states, Harris would have gained at least another 3.5 million votes, topping Trump's popular vote tally by 1.2 million. Greg brings us the numbers. He lays it out. You can read it over at HartmannReport.com, absolutely free. It's titled Trump Lost, Vote Suppression Won at HartmannReport.com. Check it out.
They say AI is the future, a rising sun that can't be stopped. But every time the hype runs wild, it ends with someone getting dropped. They're building data halls like temples, lighting up the whole night sky, saying AI will last forever, bet big the curve will never die. But out here where bills are climbing, where every paycheck disappears, the last time bubbles burst like this, we paid the price for years. When the AI bubble bursts on Main Street, the billionaires won't feel the pain. They'll cash out clean and vanish fast, while we're left holding all the strain. The power bills will skyrocket, the pensions turn to dust when the AI bubble bursts on Main Street. Tell me, who do working people trust?
Welcome back. 25 minutes past the hour. So this is absolutely nuts. You know, when the Department of Justice, or the I guess it was it was the DOJ, deported these 200 plus men to El Salvador, where they were put in this hellhole prison. It's not even a prison, it's a concentration camp. Bukele, the dictator of El Salvador, who calls himself a dictator, publicly says nobody ever leaves this alive. Not possible. If you're going to leave this place, you're going to leave in a box. It's a death center. And Kristi Noem was told by a federal judge, you may not send people there. These people, most of them haven't even committed a crime. I mean, they hadn't even committed a crime. Most of them hadn't even committed a crime. And she did it anyway. And we now learn, this leaked memo today, that we now learn that she sent these people, and Judge Boasberg is furious. If she was not the head of our Department of Justice, I mean, she could be going to prison. Or and Pam Bondi. I mean, what is up with this? Excuse me, DHS, Department of Homeland Security. I've been mixing that up with DOJ this morning. I mean, here she is running the Department of Homeland Security, and she's breaking the law. She's defying a federal judge, and it's now hitting the news. I mean, this is. I think this could be one of the biggest scandals in the history of America. This is extraordinary.
You're listening to the Thom Hartmann Program. Call 202-808-9925.
We'll be right back. Also, Democratic senators want to know what's going on with Tom Homan. We'll talk about that, and I'll pick up your calls right after the break. In the Thom Hartmann Book Club is Code Red by E.J. Dionne Jr. It's how progressives and moderates can unite to save our country. This is from the introduction, titled The Opportunity We Dare Not Miss. Will progressives and moderates feud while America burns? Or will these natural allies take advantage of a historic opportunity to strengthen American democracy and defeat an increasingly radical form of conservatism? The choice in our politics is just that stark. This book is offered in a spirit of hope, but with a sense of alarm. My hope is inspired by the broad and principled opposition that Donald Trump's presidency called forth. It is a movement that can and should be the driving force in our politics long after Trump is gone. His abuses of office, his divisiveness, his bigotry, his autocratic habits, and his utter lack of seriousness about the responsibilities of the presidency drew millions of previously disengaged citizens to the public square and the ballot box. The danger he represented inspired young Americans to participate in our public life at unprecedented levels. Tens of thousands of Americans, especially women, have gathered in libraries, diners, and church basements to share wisdom, to organize, and in many cases to run for office themselves. These newly engaged citizens have created an opportunity to build a broad alliance for practical and visionary government, as promising as anything since the Great Depression gave Franklin Roosevelt the chance to build the New Deal coalition. To seize this opening, progressives and moderates must realize that they are allies who have more in common than they sometimes wish to admit. They share a commitment to what public life can achieve and the hope that government can be decent again. They reject the appeals to racism that have been Trump's calling card and the divisiveness at the heart of his electoral strategy. Together, they long for a politics focused on freedom, fairness, and the future. This new politics would be rooted in the economic justice that has always been the left's driving goal, and in the problem-solving approach to government that moderates have long championed. It's true that these camps often battle over whether the nation should seek restoration or transformation in the years after Trump. In fact, our country needs both. To restore the democratic norms we have always valued, we must begin to heal the social and economic wounds that led to Trump's presidency in the first place. Yet there is resistance to common ground among progressives and moderates alike. They often mistrust each other's motives, battle fiercely over tactics, argue over how much change our country needs, and squabble over whether specific policy ideas go too far or not far enough. The moderate says, hey, progressive, you think that if you just lay out the boldest and most ambitious approach to any given problem, the people will rally to your side. Really? For one thing, people may like your objective, but think you're changing things way more than we have to. And we can battle to the death over, say, a Democratic Party platform plank or the first draft of a bill. But without the hard negotiating and compromising that legislative politics requires, a bold idea will remain just a platform plank. That really doesn't do anyone any good. You subject everyone to so many litmus tests that we might as well be in chemistry class. And God save us from your abuse on Twitter if we disagree with you. You lefties have no idea how to win elections outside of Berkeley or Brooklyn, and some of your ideas are so sweeping that they'll scare potential voters away. At this point, the moderate is likely to wield the sturdy old punchline, don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good. But hold on, says the progressive. You moderates spend so much time negotiating with yourselves that you compromise away goals and priorities before the real battle even begins. Your ideas get so soggy and complicated that they mobilize no one and mostly put people to sleep. Better to have the courage of your convictions, lay out your hopes plainly and passionately, and inspire voters to join in. Besides, you middle-of-the-roaders were so petrified of Ronald Reagan and the right wing that you caved into the Gipper's economic ideas, let inequality run wild, and gave us a racist and grossly unfair criminal justice system. The extremists have pulled the political center so far right that the only way back to sanity is to show our fellow citizens what a real progressive program looks like. At the risk of sounding like a perhaps unwelcome counselor attempting to ease a family quarrel, I would plead with moderates and progressives to listen to each other carefully. If the events since 2016 do not teach moderates and progressives that they must find ways of working together, nothing will. If they fail to heed each other's advice and take each other's concerns seriously, they will surrender the political system to an increasingly undemocratic right with no interest in any of their shared goals, priorities, and commitments. Moderates are right about the complexity of getting things done in a democracy.
Even when the boldest ideas have prevailed, they did so because complex coalitions were built. Important, and it should be said often legitimate interests were accommodated, and some lesser goals were left by the wayside to be fought for another day. Moderates are also right that democracy requires persuading those who are open to change but worry about how this or that reform might work in practice or affect them personally. Think losing their private health insurance. Disdaining as sellouts, those who raise inconvenient questions or express qualms is not the way to build a majority for reform. Moderates are also right that Americans in large number are tired of politics that involves more yelling than dialogue, more demonizing than understanding. But progressives are right to say that for the last 3 decades, moderates have spent too much time negotiating with themselves.
Hey, Thom Hartmann here. KBCS is hosting me out at Town Hall Seattle with special guest Katie Wilson on Saturday, December 6th. I'll be discussing my new book, The Last American President, speaking to the day's most pressing issues, and have a Q&A and book signing. You can get tickets now at kbcs.fm. See you there. Tag You're It.
It started on a quiet farm just before the big day, when Farmer Joe came down the road with his axe and a bale of hay. The turkeys huddled in the barn, whispering their grand plan. We've had enough of stuffing and gravy, time to take a stand. It's the great turkey uprising, feathers in the air. They're marching to the farmhouse with a gobble and a glare. Knives and forks that tremble and pies are in despair. The turkeys are revolting, run for your lives, beware.
There you go, 35 minutes past the hour. So a group of Democratic senators want to know what's going on with Tom Homan. You know, there was reported, in fact, it was MSNBC that broke the story, that the FBI had videotape of Tom Homan taking $50,000 in a paper bag, which sure sounds like a bribe. I mean, I believe that was it was a sting operation. And so now you've got Sheldon Whitehouse of Rhode Island, Richard Blumenthal of Connecticut, and Adam Schiff of California, 3 senators who have filed a Freedom of Information Act request, a FOIA request. And the Trump administration is ignoring it, which is outrageous. In mid-October, Homan said, "I didn't take $50,000 from anybody." And he said that to Bill O'Reilly. But these senators are saying, well, one of them, this is Ken Delanian, said, to settle this, it would be great if the White House were to release the case files and any FBI recordings of Homan's meetings with undercover agents posing as businessmen. Yeah, wouldn't it be? We are living through the single most corrupt administration in the history of the United States. We thought Andrew Johnson was bad. We thought Andrew Jackson was bad. We thought Coolidge was bad, with Teapot Dome and all that. Although I suppose you could blame much of that on Harding. But, Albert Fell being the Secretary of the Interior and all that stuff. But we thought Nixon was bad. I mean, this is just... This guy's family has made like $5 billion off his presidency just in 10 months. I mean, what are they going to end up competing with Elon Musk to be the richest man in the world by the time he's done in another 3 years? I think it's entirely possible. This is just nuts. All right, what's on your mind here? Nicholas in San Cristobal, Mexico. Hey, Nicholas, what's up?
Welcome back. You were badly missed, sorely missed. Although I do hope you had at least something of a peaceful 2 weeks with Louise.
We did.
And I wish you a happy Thanksgiving tomorrow, by the way.
Thank you. Back at you. You too.
Gobble, gobble. But brace yourself. I am here to shatter your peace, I hope.
Okay.
Did you read James Carville's article yesterday in the Times?
I did not. I
think the title of it was Out with Woke, In with Outrage, or In with Rage. And Carville is raging. I have been for several months. I think you might remember a call I made to you asking you to become more strident, et cetera, et cetera. I also spoke with Jefferson several months ago, maybe over the 4th of July vacation, not sure, about the exact same thing. So I'm outraged again, having read Carville. He says there is a tremendous outrage in the country, and he's a man, although he admits to being described as a centrist for many years, he says incorrectly.
Well, what happened was, you'll recall, back about 3 months ago, he famously said on CNN that his advice to Democrats was to just, roll over and stay quiet.
Right, to sit back and do nothing and wait for it to happen.
Yeah, and he got so much blowback that he's now changed his tune and he's trying to reinvent himself.
Right. Very possibly, but I think he's doing it successfully, and I'm pleased because he did help to bring us Clinton. Clinton may have not been the savior on a white horse that we all wanted. Certainly not. We know too much now. Neither did Obama, but he also helped to bring us Obama. All of them considerably better than the Republican competition, we must remind ourselves. So I'm still on the guy's side, and I am on the side of outrage. I want to challenge you to become more strident, more outraged, and louder in your outrage than you have so far been. I wanted you to become an absolute warrior on behalf of the American people, because if we drop this ball this time and do not pick up on the public outrage, we will lose it all.
Yeah. Thank you, Nicholas. I'm not Mike Malloy. I love Mike. He's an old and dear friend, and I have tremendous respect for him. But I am me, and I'm not going to stop being me, and I'm not going to pretend to be somebody other than me.
I understand that.
And I am experiencing a considerable level of outrage, and I have been for many years, I think I express it well. I don't, in defense of myself and how I do this program, I think people get it.
Fair enough. But a little bit more outrage then, if not total outrage.
Okay. Thanks for the advice, Nicholas. Good talking to you. Michael in Bronx, New York. Hey, Michael, what's on your mind today?
First off, a very happy Thanksgiving to you and to your family and to all listening. Even those who are opposition, we're approaching the holiday season. So this is the one time of year which I hope and pray for unity and goodwill.
Yeah.
And just
a time for reconciliation, perhaps even.
Yeah, but just put
with
down
outrage.
Put down the weapons.
So, yes.
But also we still raise awareness. Mm-hmm. Now, there are two things come to mind, Tom. First off, in the thing of unlawful orders, all right, God bless the 6 Democrats who served this nation, unlike the Mr. Bone Spurs that is just wrecking the White House.
Yeah.
All right.
Literally.
They serve
physically.
That's why I picked my choice of words that time, my friend.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I get it.
But the thing is, at least they served, and they're reminding those in the military that, if I understand correctly, not only do they have the right to refuse to follow unlawful orders, but based on the oaths that they've taken, they're duly bound to refuse those unlawful orders.
Correct.
You guys took an oath to follow the laws and the Constitution of the United States. Nowhere on those official oaths doesn't mention the name Donald J. Trump or bowing down and kissing his rump.
I think there's a very real possibility, Michael, that you're going to see some people being investigated and prosecuted for the extrajudicial murder of these 80 people in these 20-some-odd boats that they've blown up now.
I know.
And there's got to be a bunch of people in the chain of command right now who are really starting to sweat it.
I mean, you got to think about it. We all know the unlawful orders of killing, assaulting. I mean, if they turn around and told you to do that to your own family, are you going to do it?
Yeah.
And then it also applies to these lawyers, too. I mean, these lawyers that are working with Trump, and they're saying that if you don't do his orders, he's going to fire you. Well, the U.S. attorney that was fired because he said that there was no evidence against James Comey or even Letitia James to warrant the charges, yeah, he was fired, but he still has his law license. Unlike I forgot her name, that took over the case just to appease Trump. She has a law license, not a prosecutorial experience,
right.
but because of the falsehoods, she now risks losing her law license. So think about this, ladies and gentlemen that are in the legal profession. Which is worse? Being fired by a 34-time convicted felon or losing your law license for life?
Yeah.
And before I go, Tom, here's a question. When the judge tossed out the charges against Comey and James, he did it without prejudice.
Correct.
Now, this goes to show how
Which means the case can be brought back again, yeah.
So the question to Pam Bondi is like, what the hell is there to appeal if you're able to refile? And in my view, because of the previous U.S. attorney saying that there's no evidence, to me, that's a slam dunk that this was a frivolous.
Not just frivolous. This was prosecutorial misconduct. This was a vindictive prosecution. That's a crime itself.
Yes, so it should have been dismissed.
Yeah, no, Dean Obeidallah, who's an attorney, he comes on this program regularly, and my colleague here on Sirius XM, wrote in his piece, I think it was yesterday, on his Substack newsletter, about how both Bondi and Noem should be in jail. I mean, he's talking about, these people are breaking the law. They're not just, this goes way beyond just, losing your law license.
Right.
That they should be in friggin' prison. And I get it. I totally get it. And I think there's going to be some serious reckoning coming. Michael, thank you for the call, and best of Thanksgiving to you. Happy Thanksgiving to you. We'll be right back. Stick around.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann. Visit ThomHartmann.com for audio and video archives.
45 minutes past the hour, back with more of your calls in just a moment. And welcome back. Beachside Bill in Orlando, Florida. Hey, Bill, what's up?
Afternoon, Tom. Hope everybody's well out there and happy. What I like to call tomorrow is Indigenous Peoples Remembrance Day. Thanksgiving is one thing, but
agree.
Without the Indigenous people, history might have changed back then. Who knows?
There would have been no Thanksgiving. There probably would have been.
Yeah, there would have been. Yeah,
starvation.
exactly. Yeah, exactly. The real story instead of this whitewash. But I'll get to my point here. What's been bugging me with Marjorie Taylor Greene and the government shutdown is I did a little quick math. You could take $175,000 that the members of the House make and divide it by 12, and you roughly get $14,000 and change a month. So I've been calling my Congress. $14,000 a month per month.
Oh, I see that the person's got. I'm sorry, I thought you were dividing among 14 people. Yeah, I got it.
No. 12 into $175,000 that they make. Right. It's roughly $14,000 and change.
Right.
There's a lot of zeros.
Yeah. Sorry, I misunderstood.
But that's my point is I've been calling my congressman and I've been reminding him, who is Mike Haradopoulos here in Florida, that and he's a Trumpster, that he lives in a gated community right up near me here. So I always bug him that he has his lawns done by immigrants. Probably, he probably has help who are immigrants. And I say, look at those people and remember them, because without them, we are nothing. Without their help, and I just try to keep, I always pick at them because, $14,000 a month is a lot of coin. And look at the people in the food lines here.
Yeah.
It's increasing, every single day. I'm fortunate where I live alone and I don't have any children, so I can take care of myself. But I feel for the people out there, the children, who
it's a tough time. 60% of America is literally living paycheck to paycheck. And roughly 20% of America is in such deep poverty that in many cases their children are experiencing hunger. And we've got 24 million people who are uninsured in this country. I mean, it's insane, Bill, the state of this country as a result of Republican policies and Republican presidencies.
But the thing that gets me with Marjorie Taylor Greene, it was, she retired at 5 years and a day, on January 5th when it comes up. She's going to get her pension, and there's something that for life, and whoever can pick it up, that's for life, $175,000 a year. I find that obscene. People, like I said, people are hurting out there, and these people. Well, they only work less than a month a year, Tom. Right? They're not. They're not there. Look they just took 2 months off on our dime. Yep. While the East Wing was destroyed, for 300. So
on the one hand, Bill, I'm not sure exactly what the therefore is that you're heading toward, but I'm not opposed to paying people well for being legislators. I don't want them to be drafted away by some business that wants to hire them.
I agree with you. I'm not saying that they shouldn't be paid. Yeah, and be there, and be there. That's all. And the Democrats were during the shutdown. They were there.
Yeah, they were there every
I give
day.
them credit.
And the Republicans were like in Bermuda or something. Bill, I'm out of time, but thanks for the call. It's a great rant. 49 minutes past the hour. I'll be back with you in 60 seconds. Stay with us. Hey, thanks so much for sharing our program and for reaching out to our stations and sponsors and letting them know that you're listening. It really means a lot to us. So have you noticed that the Republicans are pretty much not talking about a constitutional convention anymore? They used to be gung-ho to rewrite the Constitution. They wanted to put corporate personhood in there. They wanted to change it so that women can't vote. They wanted to do away with the election of senators, repeal the 17th Amendment, take us back to them being appointed by the states. They had all these they wanted to outlaw labor unions, all these weird ideas, but they've stopped talking about it. I mean, they're still moving forward on it, but it's not. Project 2025, for example, their ultimate talking document, does not have one single mention in it about a constitutional convention. Why would that be? Well, it's because the Supreme Court is doing their work for them. I mean, they have overturned Article 2. They've overturned the 1st, 4th, 9th, and 14th Amendments. They've overturned Article 1, Section 7. All the details of this whole thing are over at HartmannReport.com. You got to check it out. Welcome back. 35 minutes, or no, I'm sorry, 50 minutes, 51 minutes, 9 minutes before the hour. David in Woodland Hills, California. Hey, David, what's on your mind today?
Well, it's anything goes week, so are you up for a little political satire?
Sure. Always.
Okay, so I've been watching the Ken Burns PBS American Revolution. Great show, highly recommended. And all these PBS shows start out the same way. Tonight on PBS, the American Revolution. The American Revolution was brought to you by the Amundsen Foundation, Bank of America, the Phil and Lily Collins Family Trust, and on, listing all the major donors, and always ending in, and viewers like you. Yep. So I got to thinking, what if MAGA took over PBS? What would that sound like?
The Civil War, brought to you by the Klan.
Tonight on MAGA PBS, a very special presentation, Hate Thy Neighbor. Hate Thy Neighbor was brought to you by the Ku Klux Klan, the Adolf Hitler Foundation, the People Against Humanity Fund, DieLiberalsDie.org.
There you go.
Disabled Racists, the Pollute the Bay Endowment, the Sons of Satan Society, the Charles Manson Family Trust, and viewers like you.
Yeah, there you go. I like it, David. I like it. That's a good one.
Thank you.
Thank you for a holiday smile. Hills in Ventura, California. Hey, Hills, what's on your mind today?
Hey, good morning. Regarding unlawful orders, I just wanted to say, Sergeant Callie, Milai.
Yeah, we should have learned.
That's not why I called. I called because of and I heard a little peep, and I don't want to steal any thunder about looking into this Montana initiative called TEI, Transparent Elections Initiative, sponsored by former Montana Commissioner of Political Practices Jeff Mangan.
Yep.
Also supported by John Coates of Harvard, Rob Jackson of NYU Law, and a couple quick
There's a bunch of,
20,
this thing has a lot of support, and it's getting a lot of attention all across the country. It will be on the ballot next November, so we still have a year.
And there's been a 2,800% rise in outside spending since Citizens United, and then, and 75% of Americans support overturning Citizens United, and 71% at least want strong campaign reform.
Yep.
So I'm wondering, are you going to have Sean got through to John Tester? He would be great at helping to publicize it.
Yeah.
Well, but I don't know if we want to endanger his career there. You know, we want him to get back.
I don't know. You know, we're fine here, and I've got the story teed up for the third hour of the program, and you know we'll dig into the details of it. But it's a pretty straightforward. It's a pretty straightforward thing. I mean, you know, they're basically just saying, you know, corporations can, you know, regardless of what the Supreme Court says, we have the final say in what corporations can and can't do, and what we're going to say is that they can't pour money into politics. Period. And I support it. Hills, thanks for the call. Andre in Chicago. Hey, Andre, what's on your mind today?
Hello, Tom. Season greeting to you, your family, your producers, and your staff.
Well, thank you. Back at you.
Yeah. Tom, I watch a lot of TV here in Chicago, a lot of the local TV stations. And it seems to me that many of them have become propaganda networks for Donald Trump, just like Fox News is. I say that because instead of them defending those six people, those six elected officials, what have you, and Mark, instead of them defending them, they're going along with Donald Trump's false accusations of sedition, instead of them pointing out the fact that Donald Trump is the real seditionist and treasonous person. He actually did commit some sedition.
Are your local TV stations owned by Fox or by Sinclair? I'm assuming probably both.
I'm not sure, Tom, but I tell you what I watch. I watch 2579. Is the ones I watch, and that's what I see. So I don't know who they own by. I really don't.
Well, if you're watching all four of your major networks in the city, at least two of them are owned by hardcore. Well, now CBS too, you know, is owned by the Ellison family. So you got your CBS station is going to be right wing, your Fox station is going to be right wing, ABC, NBC, I don't know. We'll see. So, you know, you're probably getting it at least from those two stations. Oh, and your ABC or CBS may well be owned by Sinclair, in which case they're controlling the local news.
Right, but you know what, Tom? It seems to me that since Donald Trump was elected, their vision has become more pronounced. See, I never really noticed it before Trump was in there with these stations. But it's more pronounced now, and they should be defending these six people, not let Donald Trump set the narrative. He is the one that had, on January 6th, we all know what he did. I don't need to repeat it. But these people are innocent, and all they were doing was stating the facts. Do not follow illegal orders. And that's something that you would tell anybody. But the news media is portraying this as if they did something wrong. The same way that they would refuse to repeat that Jack Smith is a Republican. They don't say that either. They just say Donald Trump's enemies. But it needs to be pointed out that Jack Smith is a Republican, Rutherford Republican. Everybody, exception of one, Letitia James, has been Republican, and the news media is not pointing that out. Thank you, Tom. Enjoy the holidays.
Excellent point, Andre, on media bias, and that's deserving of a rant in and of itself too. But you're absolutely right, and the media consolidation that has happened in the years since the Telecommunications Act was signed in '96 has been a disaster for democracy in America, and we need to undo it. We've got a lot of work ahead of us. So let's stay of good cheer and move ahead. We'll be right back. In addition to bringing you the Thom Hartmann program here on Free Speech TV and Video Media Online, we also have a whole set of ways you can interact with us and tools you can use to spread the word about the importance of democracy and the threats to it in our republic. First, there's your daily homework. Sue Nethercutt puts together a daily email newsletter that has a link to every story I discuss on the air, so you can find my sources and you can share them with your friends. It's free and you can sign up at thomhartmann.com. Second, I publish my daily take every day over at the hartmannreport.com website. That's also free if you want the daily 5 days a week rant in your inbox. No ads either. Third, we have the podcasts. There's the free 1-hour version of our daily show that's advertising supported. You can find that wherever you get your podcasts normally. And then there's also the podcast of the entire 3-hour show with no advertisements, and that's available by subscription over at thomhartmann.com. So check them all out at thomhartmann.com and hartmannreport.com.
We say fight back!
Our book today in the Thom Hartmann Book Club is The Hidden History of Big Brother in America, How the Death of Privacy and the Rise of Surveillance Threaten Us and Our Democracy. This is from the introduction, titled The Big Picture of Social Control versus Democracy. This book deals with two very large and often amorphous concepts, privacy and surveillance in the context of government and the marketplace. Both concepts have undergone changes over the millennia of recorded human history, and those changes have dramatically sped up and expanded over the past few centuries, starting with the widespread use of the printing press in the mid to late 15th century, when books and newspapers began to proliferate across Europe, and in the rest of the civilized world by the end of the 17th century, civilized in quotes. The development of radio, television, and the internet in the 20th century heightened the need to define more clearly what both concepts meant and how they applied both to governments, the public sector, and to individual and corporate players, the private sector. The thought police and Big Brother are terms introduced into the popular lexicon by George Orwell in his novel 1984. Big Brother was the overweening, all-powerful government of Orwell's novel, and the thought police were those who managed to burrow so deeply into every citizen's behavior, speech, and even thoughts that they could control or punish behavior based on the slightest deviations from orthodoxy. Orwell was only slightly off the mark. Big Brother types of government and thought police types of social control are now widespread in the world and incompatible with democracy, as I'll show in more detail later in the book. Most concerning for Americans and citizens of other democratic nations, in quote, the mentality of both has heavily infiltrated both American government and corporate sectors, reaching so deeply into the day-to-day details of our lives that the techniques and technologies they use can and do not only control, but predict our behavior. The goals of those who violate privacy and use surveillance is almost always social control and behavior modification. Setting aside pure voyeurism, these are the areas where money is made, power is accumulated, and political or business goals are reached. And whether they are of government or of corporate Big Brother, the goals are largely the same and consistent with those just mentioned. Secrets are now for government and giant corporations to know and hold, but not for average people. And they're used by Big Brother to both acquire and hold power. J. Edgar Hoover had secrets to hide, for example, so he knew well their power. A gay man at the pinnacle of American power for most of his life, the FBI director knew that in many U.S. states, he and his lover, Clyde Tolson, could be prosecuted and sent to prison for their private, consensual behavior. Yet Hoover and Tolson lived together, and their relationship was an open secret among Washington's cognoscenti. I still remember a beautiful summer day in Ireland, Louise and I sitting in the living room of author Anthony Summers and his wife Robin, as they described to us the shocking details of Hoover's life and abuses of power they'd uncovered writing Official and Confidential, The Secret Life of J. Edgar Hoover. That books like Summers weren't published until after Hoover's death is a striking testimonial to the power of surveillance and the blackmail material it can produce to keep powerful people's secrets hidden even from the world's best investigative journalists. Every politician or reporter of any consequence knew that Hoover had a file on him. They were almost all men back then, and powerful men at that time were far more likely to harbor salacious secrets, ensuring Hoover an unbroken hold over the FBI from its founding in 1935 to his 1977 death. But Hoover didn't use his massive FBI surveillance powers just to cow politicians and reporters. He was also interested in advancing policies close to his heart. A dedicated white supremacist running an FBI where all meaningful power was held in white hands throughout his life, Hoover, or an underling at his behest, famously sent FBI surveillance tapes of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. having an extramarital affair to the civil rights leader himself, implying that they'd next go to his wife and the public if he didn't commit suicide. Hoover also spent his entire career downplaying the role of Italian organized crime in the United States because, among other things, mafia godfather Santo Trafficante had the goods on his sexual orientation and regularly hosted him and Tolson for gambling junkets. When, in 1961, Attorney General Robert F. Kennedy overruled Hoover and began prosecuting the mob, with the number of cases brought shooting up from dozens annually to over 700 a year in the early 1960s, the mafia backlash eventually destroyed the Kennedy dynasty. There's a more modern story of how surveillance and invasions of privacy have impacted American politics. The rise to the presidency of serial rapist, wannabe fascist, and crooked businessman Donald Trump. The biggest big brother of the corporate world, Facebook, had for years been compiling massive troves of personal data on Americans, even Americans without a Facebook account, as any page with a Facebook logo on it can send your browsing activity back to Facebook. And sometime in the mid-2010s, Cambridge Analytica hired a data scientist to put together an app that could suck down that data without Facebook's knowledge. Cambridge once bragged that they ended up with more than 4,000 data points on each of 230 million Americans. The book, The Hidden History of Brother in America, How the Death of Privacy and the Rise of Surveillance Threaten Us and Our Democracy, by Thom Hartmann.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
Hey, welcome to the second hour of our program. On the line with us, our buddy Phil Ittner, the veteran war correspondent based out of Kyiv, Ukraine. He's the host of the podcast On the Edge. His website, Philip Ittner, P-H-I-L-L, 1L, 2 T's, PHILIPITTNER.com.
There you go.
And Ittner Philip on Blue Sky and on Twitter. Phil, welcome back.
Good to be back. Not in Kiev currently. I'm back in the States for the holidays and to take care of some things that, needed my actual physical presence. So I left about 10 days ago, which was the day of the morning. I left in the morning of the start of a really strong attack that hasn't stopped since then. They've been absolutely pounding the cities. The Russians have been attacking Kiev on a regular basis, and massive drone attacks and things of that nature. All the while, this proposed peace plan is being floated out there, and it's all tied in together, obviously, I was speaking to friends of mine who are back there. Obviously, everybody's exhausted, but the plan that's being proposed a lot of people are rejecting it out of hand.
It's a surrender plan. I mean, now what's astonishing to me is Steve Witkoff and his sons, or his son Zach, and Donald Trump and his sons, Eric and Don, started this company in September of last year. It's called World Liberty Financial. And they raised $550 million by March. The Trump family gets 75% of the net revenue. And so far, this thing has now, because they issued new cryptocurrency, has raised the net worth of the Trump family by roughly $5 billion. But they're looking for investors. And the guy that Witkoff was coaching to tell, to tell
Yuri
Putin,
Yushikov.
Yeah, to tell Putin that he should call Trump before Zelensky shows up, which is what caused that whole meeting to blow up in Zelensky's face. The guy who's negotiating is in charge of the Russian Sovereign Wealth Fund. He's the guy who passes out money from Russia. And there's no way of knowing if the Russian Sovereign Wealth Fund is funding Steve Witkoff and Donald Trump's son's company. I mean, we just don't know because it's not, it's not transparent. It's not a publicly held company. But holy crap! I mean, the potential for not just god-awful collusion and something that I think you would call treason. Taking money from a foreign government and then helping that government manipulate the president of the United States. This is insane.
Well, I've been saying it for years. The Russians have been infiltrating our body politic for a very, very long time in a concerted military, covert, PSYOP intelligence operation. Otherwise, why would this be coordinated out of the GRU? You have to understand the GRU is military intelligence. Why wouldn't if they were seeing it as some sort of kind of espionage, tete-a-tete kind of spies and cloak and dagger, then why wasn't it done out of the foreign service, the SVR? Right. This is seen by the Russians as a military operation. We have to understand that they perceive themselves to be at conflict with us directly, and they are acting accordingly. And the best thing that they can do, because they cannot match us in terms of military strength, is to infiltrate our media, infiltrate our politics, infiltrate industry, infiltrate whatever groups in civil society, pit one group against the other. All of these things, these techniques, they have been using for a very long time, and this is one of them. This entire thing is almost farcical in the sense that this is obviously an unacceptable proposal.
Well, and Witkoff has no background in diplomacy. He has no background in any. He's a real estate billionaire who started a company with Donald Trump and is looking for investors, and now he's got the head of the Russian investment fund coaching him or him coaching that guy, I guess, on how to coach Putin, on how to manipulate. It's
Keystone Cops. It's absolutely Keystone.
No, it's Benedict Arnold.
Well, add that to the mix as well. I mean, there are no Russia experts. Tom, I'm going to shock you. I'm going to tell you something you may not know. There are people who study Russia their entire lives. Sure. They fixate and they learn.
People like Michael McCall. Yeah, I know him.
Mike McCall, Timothy Snyder. Look, there's a wealth of very knowledgeable people who understand this conflict. None of them are involved in this.
That's right.
They have in Trump's first administration, he swept that place of anybody that had a whiff of Russian expertise because of the whole collusion issue in the 2016 election. Mm-hmm. He swept deck, and they've never recovered from it. There are no experts. What Marco Rubio, does Marco Rubio speak Russian or Ukrainian? Who are the guys that have spent years in that region, studying that region. They're not there. And the Russians know it, and they are running circles around us.
They are playing us like a friggin' fiddle, and have
like
been,
cat with a mouse.
Yeah, I absolutely. Now, we're talking with Phil Ittner, a veteran war correspondent who's typically based in Kyiv. He's in the U.S. right now. But Phil, I wanted to run just a couple of headlines by you and get your take on these things. One is this is from the New York Times: NATO scrambles jets after deepest drone breach yet into Romania. Russia's been doing this for a couple of weeks now, sending drones over Poland, over Estonia, over Latvia, and Romania. This is the second time, I think. This is the deepest breach. What do you think is going on?
I think there's a couple things going on. I think one thing is a not unsubtle threat. This could come to you. Find peace, or this could come to you. The other one is to show how unprepared they are, so they better start shifting assets to those regions, and don't supply weaponry to Ukraine. You're going to need that. So why send it there?
Don't you think it's possible also that what they're doing is they're probing defenses, so as they're preparing their own war plans for after they take Ukraine, and then they go for Romania, Latvia, Estonia, Lithuania, Poland?
It is not unimaginable. I have always said that it doesn't necessarily mean a military incursion if Russia is successful in Ukraine, because it'll have the dominance then that it can exert a threat.
Well, they do it with
ultimately, and they I could see them easily tying up to Transnistria. They've got a base there.
Yep.
A little breakaway area.
Yep.
It's Moldova. They'll strengthen their hand in the Caucasus.
Yep.
It's the consequences of this defeat is what this proposal is. It is a defeat. It is acquiescing. It's acquiescing to everything Moscow wants.
Yeah, and hopefully they,
and no consequences for them.
Yeah,
none.
Of course. Here's another
Slap
headline.
on the wrist.
This out of the Financial Times: top Russian general in Venezuela. Now, Venezuela, I understand, has a mutual defense pact with both Russia and China. I don't know if they're treaties. I don't know how tight they are or how firm they are. What are your thoughts on the possibility that Trump is trying to do with Venezuela like Reagan did with Grenada and Bush did with Iraq and Afghanistan? Have a little war so you get reelected. To make yourself popular, distract people from your problems, particularly the economy. If he tries to have a little war in Venezuela, what are the odds Russia gets involved?
Well, I know the Russians have been supplying the Venezuelans with fighter jets and other kind of armored vehicles, and I don't know if they've been sending them tanks of any significant matter. But regardless, I know that they do sell them arms. So they could be down there, prepping them for some sort of God forbid conflict, that they get all their ducks in a row. Putting a Russian pilot in a Russian fighter jet and sending him into the air to go up against an American pilot would be unnecessarily provocative. So I don't, and there are plenty of Venezuelan pilots who will do that. So
apparently there's a couple hundred soldiers with that general in Venezuela right now, Russian soldiers, according to the headlines.
Yeah, or they'll send in their, as you say, little green men. They're what we used to call Wagnerites, but now that the Wagner group is kind of all fallen apart. They'll send in mercenaries, and they'll just nothing to do with us. Yeah, they have uniforms that look exactly like ours, and weaponry is exactly like ours, and state of the art, but nothing to do with us.
Yeah,
that's been their modus operandi for a while.
Yeah, it's wild stuff. Phil, I just have a half a minute here left. Sure. I know that you're involved with a couple of charities in Ukraine. I see these on Facebook, and I get text messages and stuff. And I'm donating to one of the charities that you recommended. You want to just refresh that for people's memory, so give out the websites and tell them about the organizations. We have 20 seconds.
There's two primary ones. One helps to get vehicles to frontline positions, either to engage in the fight or as medevac. Cars for Ukraine. Cars for Ukraine. Just take a quick Google for that. Or there is also, of course, Dr. Erwin Redliner's Ukrainian Children's Action Project, which does the pediatric care, and which just opened up a whole new wing in Lviv, which will help children from all around the country. That's great. And they continue to do great work. So both of those are groups that I'm involved with, and I can recommend.
Thank you, Phil. The great Phil Ittner. Thank you so much, Phil. Great talking to you.
Happy Thanksgiving to you, Tom. Thank
you, Phil. Thanks.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
18 minutes past the hour. Grim stories coming out of this whole medical thing. I'll tell you about that right after the break. And welcome back. Chip in Lawrence, Kansas. Hey, Chip, what's on your mind today?
Hey, happy Thanksgiving to you and yours, and to Sean and Mateo and everybody there.
Thank you. Back at you.
Thank you. I'm curious, have you heard the Campbell Soup Vice President hot mic recording?
I have not.
It just got released. He is suspended. He got caught on a hot mic talking about how their soup is only for poor people. He doesn't eat it. He would never eat it. How the meats are bioengineered. I saw a headline about that on Drudge, I think, a couple days ago, but I didn't read the article. So this is the president of the company that owns Campbell's Soup. Vice President, VP.
Yeah, trashing his product. Okay.
Yeah, and it's just for the poor people. Oh no, I don't. Not for my family.
Holy cow!
It is unbelievable. You have to listen to it.
Yeah. So many of these executives have this elite mentality. You know, we are part of the elite. It's amazing.
Yeah, he's saying how horrible it is, bioengineered crap. He's like, he even referred to meat as 3D printed, I believe.
Whoa. Amazing.
Yeah. Yeah. And I want to add, so one more thing off this topic. Mm-hmm. You know, before your vacation, you look tired. And you look alive, awake, and energetic again.
Oh, good.
I'm glad to see that.
I'm feeling pretty good. Yeah, we had a great time, and we did a lot of relaxation. We got a lot of work done, too. But we had a good time. I mean, we always work. But, we had a fine time. Chip, thanks a lot for the call. It's nice to hear from you.
Take care.
Yeah, Ziggy in Oneonta, New York. Hey, Ziggy, what's on your mind?
Hi, Tom. I just want to remind everyone that this weekend is Indivisible is sponsoring a We're Not Buying It boycott.
Right, on Amazon, Home Depot, and what was the third company I'm missing?
Target.
Target, thank you.
That's right, yes. And I just wanted to mention that to people, and don't buy anything at those stores. I would recommend other large stores that support fascism not to buy products from them, shop locally, and hopefully we'll start them off with a bad sales year this year.
Yeah, I'm all in favor of it, and I'm joining the boycott and all that. That said, I doubt it's going to have much impact, and even if it does, it'll bounce back after the holidays. But I think that the statement that is being made by it and the publicity that it's getting is actually more important than the economic impact. And therefore, it's a good thing. And it's a good thing to mention it. It's a good thing to share it with other people and to talk about it far and wide. And if you must go into Home Depot, for example, you have an electrical outlet that fries or something, and it might be appropriate, I don't know, to speak out, to say to the I mean, in a very friendly way, to say to the clerk when you're checking out, could you please ask your company or tell your company that we object to their practices cooperating with ICE, and you need to stop. And, deliver that message in person. It probably will get passed up the chain of command more rapidly than, even if you harass them on social media or something. So.
Yes, and Well, I hear the music. I had another idea I was going to go along with that same thing, but I'll talk to you some other time about it.
We'll catch up next week. Thanks a lot, Ziggy.
All right,
Good talking
take care.
to you. Yeah,
All right, bye.
have a good one. Happy Thanksgiving. 22 minutes past the hour. Back with you in a minute. Change starts with you. You can be calling your Democratic or Republican representatives to let them know what you think by calling 202-224-3121. It's the Capitol switchboard. It'll get you right through to them. Did you know that the ancient Roman Republic, which for 480 years was actually a democratic republic before Julius Caesar kind of ended the democracy phase and replaced it with the autocracy phase, that they were brought down by a very small group of very rich people. The richest man in ancient Rome was Marcus Licinius Crassus. He was the richest guy, the billionaire of Rome. And he frankly hated the Roman free bread for all welfare system. It was being paid for with his tax dollars, after all. So him and Pompey the Great and a few other rich guys got together, and they basically crashed Rome. They turned it into an oligarchy and then into a tyranny. And the parallels to what Trump is doing right now are absolutely shocking. There's an article about it over at HartmannReport.com titled "American Caesar: Trump's Path to Power Mirrors Rome's Darkest Days." Check it out.
Under Trump's rule, obedience is law, and defiance is treated like a crime. But the heartbeat of a nation won't be broken. We've stood up every single time.
24 minutes past the hour, 25 minutes past the hour. Next year, an estimated 5 million people are going to lose their health insurance because the Obamacare subsidies are not being extended. Melissa Garriga writes over in Common Dreams, "I am one of them." She says, "I was shocked to discover my premium had gone up to $2,600 per month. A price my household of four simply cannot afford. For the first time in my adult life, I will be uninsured," she writes, joining the millions who have navigated this risky reality for years. Studies show that over 40,000 Americans die every year in the United States because they don't have access to insurance, or because their insurance is inadequate, or because their insurance companies refuse to pay for things that they needed. 40,000 Americans die every year right now. And with these cuts, the estimates are an additional 40,000, because right now we got about 20 million uninsured. This is going to more than double that number. National Priorities Project reported that the Senate managed to find $32 billion to give to the Pentagon. It passed by a 77-20 vote, but they would not fund $35 billion, about the same amount of money, to extend the Affordable Care Act subsidies. Now, the Democrats were all in favor, of course, of extending these subsidies, but it was the Republicans in the Senate. If you live in a state with a Republican senator who's up for election this year, now's the time to literally call your local Democratic Party and say, how can I help? What can I do? We need to be challenging these people at every single level. And if you have a Democrat who's running, particularly if it's a tight state like, John Ossoff in Georgia, again, call the Democratic Party and say, how can I help out? It might be by sending them a check for $10. It might be by showing up at the meetings and just being there to support people. It might be going door to door. It might be sending postcards. I mean, there's lots and lots of things we can do. On the other side of the break, rewilding our children in defense of dirt, and your calls. Stay with us. It's 27 minutes past the hour. Thom Hartmann program, exposing the con in conservative.
You're listening to the Thom Hartmann program. Call 202-808-9925.
I'll be right back with more of the news of the day and your calls here on the program where despair is not an option. Our book today in the Thom Hartmann Book Club is Stokely, A Life by Peniel E. Joseph. This is from the preface. Stokely Carmichael is a troubling icon of America's civil rights years. His Black Power call became a national Rorschach test. Whereas many blacks viewed it as righteous, many whites saw violent foreboding. Newspapers brooded over Carmichael's words, quickly forming a consensus that judged the slogan to be at best intemperate and at worst a blatant call for anti-white violence and reverse racism. In 1966, Black Power reverberated around the world, galvanizing blacks, outraging whites, and inspiring a cross-section of ethnic and racial minorities. In 1969, Carmichael left the United States for Conakry, Guinea, where he reinvented himself as a roving Pan-Africanist organizer and professional revolutionary. For the next 30 years, he remained an energetic dissident, a throwback to the heady years of the 1960s. Carmichael turned the quest for black political power into his life's work. His faith in a style of politics many considered anachronistic came out of the same tenacity and stubbornness that once made him one of the most effective and controversial activists of his generation. These same qualities, however, limited Carmichael's efforts as a Pan-Africanist political mobilizer. Before leaving America, Stokely resigned as Black Power's glamorous enfant terrible. Telegenic, brash, equal parts angry and gregarious. Whether dressed in three-piece suits, leather jackets, sharecroppers' overhauls, or African dashikis, Carmichael became to represent the era's multifaceted identity. A hipster hero whose easy grace allowed him to consort effortlessly with both the dignified and the damned. The name Stokely Carmichael first came into my consciousness when I was a young boy coming of age in New York City. As the proud son of a Haitian mother who belonged to local 1199 Hospital Workers Union, part of SEIU, I grew up hearing stories of how civil rights activists, Black Power revolutionaries, Pan-Africanist freedom fighters, and trade unionists helped to shape a new world in America and beyond. By the time I was in elementary school, I was on my first picket line, accompanying my mother in support of an 1199 strike. Both Malcolm X and Martin Luther King supported 1199 during the 1960s. Stokely Carmichael's political importance came into sharper focus when I was in junior high after the premiere of the landmark PBS documentary series Eyes on the Prize, which featured the 24-year-old Carmichael's fiery Black Power speech and rightly characterized Stokely as his generation's heir to Malcolm X. Over the course of a decade of research on Carmichael, I would come to understand him as that and much more. Carmichael's youth, casual dress, and charisma made him an easily identifiable hero, one whose quick smile and passionate speeches left an indelible impression. An adopted son of the South by way of Trinidad, the Bronx, and Harlem, Stokely adapted while transforming whatever environment he encountered. As a native New Yorker growing up in the city's tense racial climate of the 1980s, I found Carmichael's survival instincts appealing. As a young graduate student in Philadelphia, I had the opportunity to hear him speak and briefly met him afterward. He encouraged me to stay committed to the Black freedom movement, a struggle he defined as infinite. With his flowing African robes, gray hair, and white beard, he looked like a prince. And he had changed his name. He was no longer Stokely Carmichael. As Malcolm Little had become Malcolm X and later El Hajj Malik El Shabazz, Stokely had become Kwame Ture. It was a name that paid homage to his two African heroes, men who had been the first presidents of their countries, Ghana's Kwame Nkrumah and Guinea's Sekou Touré. Kwame Ture spelled the Guinean's name not as the French did, as white Europeans did, but as Arabs and Muslims did. Sekou Touré, S-E-K-U-T-U-R-E. As a college student, Carmichael helped transform America by organizing sit-ins, demonstrations, and voter registrations during the civil rights movement's heroic years, a period that roughly encompasses the decade between the 1954 Brown v. Board Supreme Court decision, desegregation decision, and the 1965 Voting Rights Act, and has become enshrined in public memory through national holidays, films, commemorations, and monuments. Carmichael's deep sense of justice contributed to his evolution into Kwame Ture, the Pan-Africanist revolutionary and anti-capitalist organizer who moved to West Africa and remained tenacious in the face of searing political setbacks. Carmichael ultimately judged America incapable of creating the free and just world he had struggled for as a young man. But despite living in Africa for the final 30 years of his life, Carmichael's legendary stature as a black power activist lingered even if many ignored his lasting contributions to civil rights struggles that included a bruising quest for the vote in the Deep South. Although today largely forgotten, Stokely Carmichael remains one of the protean figures of the 20th century, a revolutionary who passionately believed in self-defense and armed rebellion, even as he revered nonviolence. The book Stokely, A Life, by Peniel L. Joseph. Hey, Bellevue, Seattle, and Tacoma. Catch me at Town Hall Seattle on Saturday, December 6th, with special guest Katie Wilson for a night focused on the most pressing issues in progressive politics. I'll discuss my new book, The Last American President, cover the day's most current concerns, and hold a Q&A and book signing. Tickets are available now at kbcs.fm. And I hope to see you there. Tag, you're it. Human beings have a couple of unique characteristics. The first is that we can be very tender and loving and concerned and caring toward people we perceive as being our group, us. We can also be extraordinarily violent against people that we consider to be them, if we think of them or this other as a threat. Probably the classic example of this is Adolf Hitler convincing Germans that, Jews were a threat to them and good Germans going along with the Holocaust. Well, this othering is built into our DNA. This is, ancient stuff. And the Republican Party, since the time of Nixon, when he started, picking up the white racist vote after Democrats laid it down in the 60s, the Republicans have been using this to try to other minorities in America as a political strategy. And this is really deadly stuff. There's a whole op-ed about it over at HartmannReport.com. Is othering human nature's deadliest instinct? Check it out.
The table's set, the candles glow, the autumn breeze begins to show. But more than harvest, more than feast, we're thankful for the fight that won't cease, for every voice.
Yep, thank you. 36 minutes past the hour, and in Defense of Dirt, I want to tell you about this real quick. This was the piece that I published this morning over on wisdomschool.com, and it's based on this story out of Finland, where a Finnish nursery, 3 to 5-year-olds, nursery school, did an experiment. They ripped up the asphalt that was behind their school, and they brought in forest soil and build a big compost pit where they could compost the food, and a live carpet of forest floor moss, and put in blueberry bushes, built compost heaps for the kids to feed, and then they invited the kids to play in the dirt, play in the mud, get their hands in it, get dirty, literally. And what they found, this was a 2-year study of 3 to 5-year-olds. They did this for 2 years, and then they examined these children against kids who went to a regular school, and they called these rewilded children, right? Back to the wilds. They said these rewilded children had fewer disease-causing skin bacteria like streptococcus. They showed stronger immune regulation, increased T regulatory cells within weeks. The gut microbiomes were healthier, indicating that they probably will not have digestive problems as they grow older. And their inflammatory associated Clostridium levels dropped. In other words, the inflammation-causing bacteria and other markers of inflammation in their bodies decreased, which extends lifespan and reduces the risk of cancer and other kinds of diseases. So the moral of the story, if you have little kids or grandkids, get them in the mud. It's, we need to rewild ourselves. And it's good for you and me, too, right? Louise and I go out in the forest every weekend. We don't roll in the mud. We climb trails, but we certainly breathe in a lot of the forest, for what it's worth. All right, what's on your mind today? Kevin in Mason, Ohio. Hey, Kevin, what's up? Kevin? Listen on Sirius XM.
Hi, Tom.
Hey.
Yes.
What's up?
Hi. Thanks for everything you do, and happy celebration to everybody and your family especially. Appreciated Jefferson's coverage, and it's great to have a stable voice. And when you started and talked about the AI, I wanted to mention what I heard on NPR News the other day, that Meta is building a huge data center in Holly Ridge, Louisiana, with a geographic footprint the size of Manhattan Island.
Mm-hmm. You can see it from Mars or from the moon.
He's going to finish it in 5 years, and I'm thinking by then it's going to be obsolete.
Yep.
We're through the looking glass, Tom.
Well, it's like, I don't know if you remember, in 1996 to 1999, there was this explosion in laying fiber cables for the internet, because the internet was going to be everything, and all that kind of stuff, and
Right.
That was all based on 1G. What's called encoding or technology, basically taking your data and trying to squeeze it into smaller packets to go through the. Well, then came 2G and 3G, and suddenly you could take 1,000 bits of data and compress it down and pass it through a pipe that's designed to only hold 1 bit or 2 bits. I'm hypersimplifying, but you get the point. And so that that increase in software, that Moore's law applied to software. Rendered an awful lot of that, these massive, giant fiber pipes unnecessary, and so you had companies like WorldCom just going out of business. I mean, it's just crazy. So
That's right.
I think that's happening. I think that's going to happen again. Good point. Good point, Kevin. Thank you.
I recommend. I just recommend everybody watch the new American Revolution and realize he's saying something really deep about the fact these early settlers from the different colonies couldn't even get along.
Oh yeah.
And I think that's
where can you see that, Kevin?
PBS.
So you have to wait until it's on at a particular time, or is there an on-demand?
No, you just go on there, click on it. It's right there.
Oh, it's on their website.
We're streaming on Spectrum, which I guess is part of that used to be they bought up Time. Yeah, I would. We need PBS and we need NPR and we need each other, and we should stop driving so much, because oil is driving the war in Gaza and it's driving the war on Venezuela.
Oh yeah,
and it's greed.
Yeah,
it's greed,
and it's paying for the war in Ukraine. Yeah, I'm with you.
Absolutely.
Yeah, Kevin, thank you very much. Well said, and happy Thanksgiving. AJ in La Mesa. Hey, AJ, what's up?
Hello, Tom. How's everything in the bunker?
We're doing just fine here in the war zone of Portland.
I take no prisoners.
Yeah.
Apropos of getting mad, I just want to remind folks of the brilliant black comedy by the legendary Patty Chayefsky from 1976, Network.
Yeah, Network, yeah.
Who would have thought in 1976 that the news divisions of the, well, back then the four major broadcasters would have ended up as subsumed by the entertainment divisions?
Right. That happened in 1987 when Reagan did away with the Fairness Doctrine.
Of course, David Sarnoff, General Sarnoff, passed in 71, but in 76, William S. Paley was still very much in control of the Columbia Broadcasting System, which I think by then had been renamed CBS Incorporated, because it also included Columbia Records. But anyhow, the brilliant line that everybody has heard, whether they know its origin or not, by the late Peter Finch, who died immediately after the film wrapped. Post-production had finished. He had a major heart attack in a hotel lobby and died. He won a posthumous Oscar for his performance as Howard Beale, as did Chayefsky for his screenplay.
Yep.
And of course, I'm a human being. Damn it.
Mm-hmm.
My life has value. I'm mad as hell, and I'm not going to take this anymore. Well, if listeners would go to their search engine, just pop in I'm mad as hell, Perrin Network 1976, it'll bring up the wiki quote page for the film, and the entire dialogue verbatim from the screenplay is posted there.
Well, the film itself is still around. I mean, it's really worth watching again. It's
absolutely,
because not only is it a cautionary tale for now, but it also is just it will sadden you so deeply to see how, you know, the state of media in '76 actually was pretty good. I mean, you know, this was about the impending failure of it, but it was viewed as science fiction. You know, I mean, at the time.
Again, who would have thunk it? And if you compare that to George Clooney's fantastic film on Edward, I'm sketching on the title.
The one on Edward R. Murrow you're talking about?
With David Strathairn playing the title role is brilliant and very, very
That's
sad.
a Broadway play too, isn't it?
I actually got to meet Paley many years ago when I was visiting my grandparents who lived in Manhattan, and my uncle, who was then the vice president of the New York Stock Exchange, introduced me, and it was a neat thing to talk to.
I heard Paley was a good guy. Have you seen Nuremberg, the new movie?
I have not.
You got to see it. You got to see it.
Let me leave you and the listeners with another brilliant Oscar-winning film by Chayefsky, because you often speak of health issues, and that would be his 1971 film, The Hospital.
I'm unfamiliar with it. I'll have to check it out.
Oh, and the opening narration is spoken by Chayefsky, and it's brilliant. Happy Thanksgiving. Stay safe and well.
Thanks a lot, AJ. Same to you and your family. Thank you, and thanks a lot for the call and for all of the over the years your contributions to the program. We'll be right back. It's 45 minutes past the hour. Stick around.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann. Visit ThomHartmann.com for audio and video archive.
It's talk media for the sane among us. We'll be right back with your calls. And welcome back. Let's see here, James in Detroit, Michigan, watching us on Free Speech TV. Hey, James, what's up?
How you doing, Tom?
Good.
I had a question regarding a couple of weeks ago. You made a comment about about white males not voting with the Democratic Party for quite some time.
Yeah.
And I was wondering, what is the genesis of that? I mean, where did that start?
It started with the Civil Rights Act and the Voting Rights Act in 1964 and 65. 1968, I believe, was the last time more than 50% of white men voted for a Democrat. And it might have been the first time that fewer than 50% voted for a Democrat. I'd have to go back and look. But that was 68, 72. Those were the pivot elections. And ever since then, there has not been a single president, and this is for the presidency, there's not been a single presidential election where more than 50% of white men voted for the Democrats. And the reason why is because the Democratic Party officially stopped being the party of the Southern racists in 64, 65, and instead became the party of basically the Union as opposed to the Confederacy, of a United States that involved everybody, all races, all religions, all, both genders, all that kind of stuff. And a lot of white men just never forgave them for it. They switched to being Republicans. But back then you had, Strom Thurmond and James Ennis, I think it was. I mean, you had all those segregationists. They were all Southern Democrats. They were, right. But by 1972, they had all either switched parties or they'd aged out of the Senate and the House.
Okay, and then it just carries over until the Trump administration.
Oh yeah, well in '72, what Nixon did when he ran for president again was against Hubert Humphrey was I guess that was '68. But maybe it was 72, it might have been 68. In any case, early on, Nixon came up with this thing he called the Southern Strategy, which was based on advice from Roger Stone and Paul Manafort and Lee Atwater. They had a little PR firm that they worked for Nixon together. And Stone, of course, is still around advising Trump. And the Southern Strategy was reach out to those Southern Democrats who feel homeless right now as Republicans and just tell them, the Republican Party is now open for racism. We're now the racist party. And you have to do it with a wink and nod. You talk about law and order and urban crime and, the welfare queens and stuff like that. And everybody understands what's really being said. And so, the GOP is now, I think probably, I don't want to say half. I just don't know percentages, but a large part of the base of the GOP is only voting Republican on race issues, in my opinion. And I think it's a tragedy. I really do. James, I got to run, but thanks for the call. Great question.
Thank you.
Yeah, good talking to you. David in Clearwater, Florida. Hey, David, thanks for listening to WMNF. What's up?
Well, I just, it's the day before Thanksgiving, and I was giving a little thanks, and I heard you on, and reminded me of a feeling I got.
Well, that's sweet. David, I just realized that I put you, that I'm going to hit a break here in just a second. In fact, I think we're hitting the break right now, Sean. Yep. And that's my bad. I'm going to put you on hold and pick you up on the other side of the break, okay? Do you mind?
Okay.
Okay, hang on just a second. In fact, Sean will just pot you down. Just hang on there. And we'll be right back. We'll be back in 60 seconds. Hey, thanks so much for sharing our program and for reaching out to our stations and sponsors and letting them know that you're listening. It really means a lot to us. It's no coincidence that the time in Europe when the church ran the continent, from around the 5th century to around the 15th or 16th century, that 1,000-year period is referred to as the Dark Ages. This is what happens when religion controls politics, when religion controls the state, the nation. And every nation of Europe was controlled essentially by the Catholic Church during that period of time. It got busted up with the Protestant Reformation in the 16th century. This was what the founders of this country very much knew about. George Washington refused to declare himself a Christian. Thomas Paine wrote an entire book embracing atheism. Ben Franklin fled Massachusetts as a teenager to escape the religious threats. And Thomas Jefferson went off on it regularly. There's a whole piece about how the Republicans are trying to impose a new dark age on America. It's all laid out, all the quotes and all the links over at HartmannReport.com. Check it out.
Out in the street.
Hey, David. Let's start over. What's up?
It's the day before Thanksgiving. So I was giving thanks, and I turned on your show, and I had
David, you are now breaking up, and I'm not sure why, or I think I'm going to have to put you back on hold. Yeah, I am going to put you on hold and ask Mateo to check it out and see what's going on with you, and we'll check in with Larry in Los Angeles here and see if we've got a problem or if it's just your phone, and hopefully we'll get back to you. Larry in Los Angeles. Hey, Larry, what's on your mind today?
Hey, it was his phone. At least it was really breaking up badly.
Yeah.
You were not.
Yeah. Okay, good.
Regarding a subject that you hit on earlier in the week, Glass-Steagall, I every now and then I have to call in and tell everyone that it had nothing to do with the 2008 recession.
Okay, explain.
If you want to look at what actually happened, is the Federal Reserve cut the Fed rate down to first it jacked it up to 6.5% for Bill Clinton trying to crash his economy. Mm-hmm. It didn't quite work, and then they took it down to 1%, and then George Bush came up with this program for to try to put minorities and poor people into home ownership. And he even put down the down payment for some people who were on welfare. And he got these people into those homes with low interest rates. At 1% is what the Fed was at. And
were these ARM loans? Adjustable rate?
Adjustable mortgage rates. Yeah, that's how he was putting them into those homes.
And that's what blew it up when they went up?
What happened is those low Fed rates caused inflation. The Fed then had to jack the Fed rate up. All of those home loans were tied to interest rates, the Fed interest rates. So when they had to jack the Fed rate up, that cost all of those millions of people, all of those poor people who were on adjustable mortgage rates, it cost all of them to lose those homes, and it put them into a state of near permanent poverty. They're still trying to work out of that. And that's what eventually caused all of those banks, and the banks were in on it. The banks were actually following Bush's policies. And so I think that's kind of the reason why they didn't go after the banks, because if they go after the banks will say, hey, you guys are the one that told us to do this.
Yeah. But my understanding, too, and I get that narrative, and you're absolutely right, and I remember it well, Larry, but I also believe that the end of Glass-Steagall is what allowed the banks that held these sketchy mortgages to then consolidate them into investment vehicles, slice those investment vehicles up, basically leverage them to the sky and sell them to investors all over the world. And that leveraging and that kind of amplification of that was what brought the whole house down when the things came down. So it was bit of both.
You gave part of the refute to that earlier today when you talked about what happened when Ronald Reagan was president. Glass-Steagall was in full effect.
Yep, that's true.
And Ronald Reagan crashed our housing sector, and it almost caused us to have another recession.
Yeah, it was the S&Ls.
When you look at it, we generally have a recession every 7 or 8 years now. It used to be a recession every 4 years prior to FDR becoming president. He actually started changing the way he handled the economy, and it brought more poor people into the system, and they started seeing a little prosperity.
Right, it slowed down the oscillations.
And that knocked down the number of, if I ignore the fact of what he did to the Japanese.
Yeah.
What that did is that caused the number of recessions to be cut in half while he was president. So with people prospering, you don't get recessions. But the Republicans still were giving us a recession every 4 years. Right up to this day, they're still giving us a recession every 4 years, even when Glass-Steagall was in effect. And now that it's not in effect, they're still giving us a recession once every 4 years. It's like clockwork.
So, Larry, I'm curious your thought. We have only about 40 seconds here until we're going to hit a break, Larry. I'm curious your thoughts on my proposition that Moore's Law and the data centers are a bomb waiting to explode.
What actually happens with progress, as far as these industrial revolutions are concerned, that actually spurs it on. And when you saw that activity that was going on when Bill Clinton was president, that was making the economy stronger. The stock market was going like gangbusters because all of the companies that use these new tools actually get more efficient.
Sure.
And some of the companies that don't adjust, they go away. And that's what we saw when Bill Clinton was president. And then what happened when George Bush came along, he and Alan Greenspan jacking the Fed rate up to 6.5%. They basically crashed our revolution, our technical revolution, and it went to China.
Oh, that's an interesting take.
It did not crash the whole world's economy. It only crashed it in America.
The
tech revolution.
Yeah, the .com, yeah. Interesting. Larry, always good talking to you. I always learned something. Thank you very much for the call. Amazing stuff. Sabrina Haake will be with us, the author of The Haake Take, about the Bondi-Halligan smackdown right after this. Stick around.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann.
In addition to bringing you the Thom Hartmann program here on Free Speech TV and Video Media Online, we also have a whole set of ways you can interact with us and tools you can use to spread the word about the importance of democracy and the threats to it in our republic. First, there's your daily homework. Sue Nethercutt puts together a daily email newsletter that has a link to every story I discuss on the air, so you can find my sources and you can share them with your friends. It's free and you can sign up at thomhartmann.com. Second, I publish my daily take every day over at the hartmannreport.com website. That's also free if you want the daily 5 days a week rant in your inbox. No ads either. Third, we have the podcasts. There's the free 1-hour version of our daily show that's advertising supported. You can find that wherever you get your podcasts normally. And then there's also the podcast of the entire 3-hour show with no advertisements, and that's available by subscription over at thomhartmann.com. So check them all out at thomhartmann.com and hartmannreport.com.
We say fight back!
Our book today is by Anita Hill. It's titled Believing, Our 30-Year Journey to End Gender Violence. And this is from the introduction. It's titled Boiling the Ocean. I am by nature a very private person, raised by a mother who is extremely private. People meeting my mother for the first time usually mistake quietness for arrogance. They call me stuck up, my mother would say, but I'm not, she insisted. As an adult, I came to realize that this incredibly strong-willed mother of 13 was shy. When she was sure of something, we all knew it, and there was little chance of winning an argument with her. By we, I mean my father, my 12 siblings, and me. She was barely 5 feet 2 inches, remaining slight even after she gained weight in her middle age, but she seemed to tower over us. Her position as the youngest daughter of her farming parents' 14 children, and the determined woman who, from the day she married my easygoing father at 16, farmed alongside him to support our large family, seemed at odds with her shyness and her insistence on personal privacy. Life on a subsistence farm afforded little chance for solitude, let alone secrecy. But she claimed as much of it as she could and encouraged me and my 5 sisters to follow suit. I sometimes chalk up her wariness of exposure to the racialized world in which she grew up. My father, George, her brother, once told me bluntly, "If you talk about harm done to you, those people will use it against you." I understood that for that generation, those people were white folks. And though my mother was more subtle, I knew that her advice, "Don't ever share your personal business, people will judge you," was rooted in a similar understanding. Well, if you consider testifying about being sexually harassed in the workplace in front of an all-white male committee sharing your personal business, they were right about the outcome. For years, I had followed their advice, keeping to myself that I had been harassed into leaving my job as an advisor as the chair of the Equal Opportunity Commission, the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission. I shared with only a few friends that Clarence Thomas's behavior had been the main reason I'd left Washington and returned to Oklahoma. When I did tell, testifying at Thomas's Supreme Court confirmation hearing, people of all races judged me. In hate mail sent to my office at the University of Oklahoma, on talk radio, in magazines and books, face-to-face and over the phone, they confronted and condemned me. I was still struggling to regain my sense of equilibrium after being thrown into the public spotlight when a call came into my office one afternoon. Without thinking or measuring the risk that it could be another threat or vitriolic rant, I picked up the receiver. In a deep, grainy voice that seemed both hesitant and threatening, the caller warned me that I had opened up a whole can of worms. The caller never mentioned his name. Anticipating what I was sure would be a diatribe, I at first wanted to hang up the phone, But instead, perhaps responding to the hint of vulnerability in his voice, I listened as the caller recalled being molested by an uncle and what happened when he finally gathered the courage to tell his family. Rather than rallying to protect him, his parents had judged him and accused him of making up stories. The Senate Judiciary Committee's members' questioning of me, he said, had reminded him of his own family's dismissive reaction. The pain of the molestation and his relatives' condemnatory response, he said, has stayed with me for years. I mostly listened as he tried to make sense of his family's denial of their siding with his uncle. Surprisingly, though, our experiences differed. The hearing had affirmed his understanding of his own painful situation. It counseled him not to blame himself, putting his family's reaction in the context of a larger systemic and societal denial and taking away the sting of personal condemnation. To him, the whole can of worms that I had opened to the public was not limited to sexual harassment. It included incest, too. At the time, with my own pain still raw, I was guarded. Being open to hearing his story of survival was an act of courage on my part. No one had ever shared with me before that a family member had violated them. The caller's story was hard for me to hear, but not nearly as hard as it was for him to tell. And over the years, thousands have shared their experiences of abuse with me. The incest survivor imagined that my testimony would trigger feelings for survivors of other forms of abuse and show that sexual harassment is not the only problem. And he was right. Over the next months, letters describing behavior from workplace harassment to spousal abuse arrived every day alongside the hate mail. And I had to muster even more commitment and emotional bravery. In one ear were the denials, the warnings of the harms of accusations of sexual harassment, and challenges to the veracity of my claims. Some went as far as accusing me of inventing my entire testimony. In the other ear were the pleas for someone to see how society had abandoned victims of abuse. After a year of listening to countless stories of survival and attempts to survive, I became increasingly aware of the gravity of gender-based violence. In 1991, before the hearing, sharing experiences of gender-based violence was taboo. Yes, a few exceptionally courageous and forward-looking women sued in courts to stop harassment, but often the court reports reflected only a few of the details of the behavior they endured. Testimony was usually very curtailed. People who wrote to me told me things that they had never shared with their family members. Some had held their secrets for decades. A woman who I knew casually told me that she had been harassed by a former high school principal when she worked in the school office during World War II. The book by Anita Hill, Believing, Our 30-Year Journey to End Gender Violence.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
Welcome to the third hour of our program. On the line with us our buddy Sabrina Haake, the federal trial attorney, over 20 years experience, specializing in First and 14th Amendment defense, contributor to numerous law journals and publications, including the Chicago Tribune. She's also the author of one of my favorite Substack newsletters. It's called The Haake Take. She spells her name H-A-A-K-E, so it's Haake Take. And Sabrina Haake, HAAKE.substack.com is the website for it, but you can just plug H-A-A-K-E into the search engine over there on Substack. It'll pop right up. And Sabrina, welcome back to the program. You had just a marvelous Haake Take, your newsletter, yesterday I think it was, about the delicious Bondi-Halligan smackdown. Explain.
Okay, so the dismissal of the Comey and Letitia James indictments sounds kind of dry to people because it's based on a faulty appointment of an interim U.S. attorney. But it's actually very juicy because what the separations clause says is that when the president gets to appoint an interim attorney for 120 days, then it becomes the judiciary's time, their turn, because what Trump tried to do in this case is appoint another U.S. attorney, acting interim attorney, after Eric Seibert refused to file a faulty indictment against Letitia James and James Comey. He said, I'm not going to do that. There's not enough facts. It doesn't meet the law. No, thank you. So his term was continually running since May. His 120 days, the initial appointment, ran out in May. Federal judge said, okay, at that point, when you renewed him, he was still the appropriate actor. But then when he, in September, decided he's not going to file these indictments, Trump said, you're out of here, and tried to fire him and appoint another successor U.S. attorney to take his place. And that's where Pam Bondi fell down, because it's a very simple law. You get 120 days for your appointment. When that's up, the courts get to appoint the next person. Otherwise, you get some clown like Trump thinking that he can go shopping and appoint these attorneys who are unethical, who are willing to risk their law license and file these bogus indictments. That's the whole reason for this, the appointments clause and the federal statute that I cited. He got 120-day period, and that was it. So it was gratifying to see the smackdown, because it was a ridiculous error and followed other errors.
I totally get it. And now the Trump administration is appealing this. What will be the basis, or do you know the basis of their appeal? I don't believe we've seen anything published yet, have we?
I haven't seen the appeal. They're announcing their decision to appeal. They think that the Supreme Court will do their bidding on this, but I think they may not, because the Supreme Court seems to be, the Federalists on the bench seem to support the expanded unitary theory, the power that Trump is seeking. When it comes to Trump, they of course clipped the wings when it was Biden seeking to step outside his authority a little bit. But when it comes to the judiciary and the preservation of the distinction between the judiciary and the executive branch, I think even the Federalists on this bench, maybe with the exception of Alito and Thomas, are going to want to hew to what the law requires, which is a federal judge. At that 120-day mark, it was up to the federal judge to appoint it, not up to Trump, and certainly not up to Pam Bondi, because otherwise you get rogue actors appointing interim attorneys to do whatever they want him to do, which, further distances the court from the law.
I get it. Was Halligan appointed by Bondi or by Trump?
Bondi, but it was at Trump's behest. She came in backdoor right after Seibert said, I got
that. The reason I ask is it seems to me that both Halligan and Bondi would be putting their law licenses at risk in doing this, aren't they?
They both have put their law licenses at risk. Pam Bondi, in supervising the whole thing, tried to also come in and put her stamp on it and say, well, I authorize, I endorse what she did, trying to sort of shift the blame over to herself to say, I take responsibility for these pleadings. But then that puts her in line of getting disbarred, because the whole premise of the indictments is faulty. And now they have this label on them that these are political indictments that were sought. What attorney are they going to get to take them at this point? But I want to say a little bit about the contempt of court issue. I think Bondi has other grounds to lose her law license. Todd Blanche has grounds to lose his law license. I'm not sure Halligan really cares. I'm not sure she was ever a serious lawyer.
Yeah. Go back to being a beauty queen.
Yeah, exactly. But I do think...
by the way, I'm not saying that maliciously or whatever. She literally was a beauty queen before she became a lawyer. That's what she did for a living.
Right. I mean, he picks all these people for how they look on camera.
Exactly.
But in terms of contempt of court, law license is separate from contempt of court. But I would rather see a very serious, like when Todd Blanche instructed one of the DOJ attorneys to say, I don't know whether Eric Seibert wrote a declination memo. This is the memo that Seibert wrote when he declined to bring the indictments against Comey and James. You write this memo, it's a standard memo saying, this is the law, this is what I found, this is why I'm not bringing the charges under the law. And of course, the reason the Department of Justice wants to keep that under the radar is because it shows that these are illegal indictments that they subsequently sought after the sitting U.S. Acting attorney declined them.
Right.
So the really juicy piece here is that Todd Blanche instructed a litigating attorney appearing before a federal court in this hearing to say, I do not know anything about the declination memo. He instructed him not to admit that it existed.
In other words, to lie.
That is a lie. Federal trial attorneys know you can be disbarred for lying or even for failure to answer with candor, because you can't put judges in a fishing expedition to try to figure out what's going on. When they ask a question, you answer the damn thing. You don't circumvent.
Right.
And he testified that Todd Blanche told him specifically not to admit that declination memo
But
existed.
who would bring these charges, against any of the three of them? I mean, local bar associations, federal courts?
No, the sitting judge can seek contempt proceedings. The disbarment would be a state bar action. But in terms of whether or not this is pitting the executive against the judiciary. This is where the Department of Justice has been going from day one. Trump has absolute disdain for the judiciary because that's the one thing that's going to stop him.
Right, they restrain him.
Right, that's the only thing standing between us and a dictatorship. So he, of course, hates the courts and has no respect for them. But the line has to be drawn. You can't just let the executive ride roughshod over the judiciary. And I think the Federalists on the bench will see that as well. Yeah. We saw that when Roberts issued a bit of a reprimand earlier in this year to Trump saying, hey, if you don't agree with the federal judge, you don't impeach him, you appeal. Right. So they're going to try to preserve the distinction between their role and the executive's role. And it's something to celebrate, too.
And all of this misconduct then seems part of a larger pattern. Another example of this being, we learned today that when the Abrego Garcia and 220 other former Venezuelans, he wasn't, but they were he was El Salvadoran, but the rest of them were Venezuelans, were shipped to this hellhole concentration camp in El Salvador illegally. And the judge had said, even if the plane is in the air, turn it around and bring it back, that it was Kristi Noem herself who said, we're going to defy the judge's order. Keep going, send them down there, let them get, raped and beaten up and tortured, which they were, actually. That seems like a crime. Explain what she did wrong and what the consequences might be.
So Judge Boasberg has now reopened the criminal contempt proceedings for what Kristi Noem did. But she can plausibly say she was relying on advice of counsel. It is a little bit of a gray area. What she did clearly violated the law and the court order, but there was a written order where Boasberg said no more deportations, turn the flights around. And then about a 50-minute gap between that oral order and the written order. And in the written order, he didn't include the language about turning the planes around. That to the American public who maybe don't understand the difference between written versus oral, they don't know that you never defy a judge's order if you want to ever practice in front of him again. That's going to be a little bit harder to sell because they won't understand that the distinction between the oral and the written doesn't really matter. So going after Kristi Noem for contempt proceedings there, I don't think is going to be as much of a legally it's valid and it should be done. But in terms of public perception, the public's not going to understand that because they're going to come out and say, look, here's the written order. It wasn't in there. We didn't do anything wrong. We followed this written order. Right. The better one to go after is the Todd Blanche order in this case, in the Halligan appointment case, where he told counsel appearing before a federal judge basically to lie about the declination memo. Yeah. And the substance of that declination memo will implicate the entire Department of Justice for deciding to pursue bogus indictments. Well, so between those two, that's the stronger.
Yeah, on Noem and Boasberg's order, it didn't. I don't know if it said it or it would certainly imply at the very least, okay, they were already in the air. The written order doesn't say in the air. Big deal. The airplane has landed in El Salvador. Turn it around and bring them back. I mean, shouldn't that have happened?
It should have, but I'm saying in the court of public opinion, when you've got 30% of the American population basically listening to anything they put on Fox News, they're going to be running the written court order that didn't say to turn the planes around, and they're going to confuse the public.
Well, I get all that. And we have about 45 seconds here before we hit a hard break. I can't stop, but I'm wondering if she's facing legal peril here, and how real that is.
Well, she's not a lawyer, so she can't be disbarred. She is facing a contempt proceeding, a criminal contempt proceeding, which can bring a jail sentence and a fine. But going after the head, one of Trump's main people, you got to make a decision about what's going to be sellable to the American public so that they understand what's happened. We need people to understand that the court of law, the rule of law, is more important than any of these decisions. And that's what's really at issue here with this, even the criminal contempt proceeding.
Well, and this was, if not a technical violation of the law, this was certainly spitting in the face of the intent of the law.
Oh, without question, without question.
Yeah, astonishing stuff. Sabrina, you are such a great resource. Thank you so much for dropping by. And let me again encourage everybody to check out your newsletter, The Haake Take, Haake, Haake Take over on Substack. It's free and it's brilliant, and you're really going to enjoy it. Sabrina, thanks a lot for dropping by.
Thanks so much. Happy Thanksgiving.
Thanks you, and you too, and your family.
Thanks for all you do for our democracy.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Seriously.
Yeah, thank you. 18 minutes past the hour.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
As Montana figured out how to crush Citizens United, I'll tell you about that after the break, and I'll pick up your calls. Stay with us. And welcome back. Chris in Littleton, Colorado. Hey, Chris, thanks for watching Free Speech TV. What's on your mind today?
Yeah, good morning, Tom. Republicans' big, brutal bill stealing Medicaid from 14 million Americans. You can only qualify for Medicaid if you have no money and are severely sick or disabled. Ending Medicaid for old people at nursing homes means they will be thrown out into the street.
Yep, and an entire industry is going to be crippled, too.
Yeah, disabled who cannot care for themselves means they will have no care, including disabled vets. Rural hospitals will close, and people will have to go many hours away to get emergency care.
Yep, which is already starting, by the way.
Very sick people who need expensive medicine or care, well, they will simply die. The big, brutal bill passed by greedy, brutal Republicans has one purpose: to give away trillions of taxpayer dollars taken from Americans that desperately need it and give trillions to billionaires. Many people will die.
Yeah.
And everybody will pay many times over for medical and health care insurance.
I completely agree with you, Chris. And one of the things that we know is that those costs are not just to the family or to the person, the 40,000 people, Americans who die every year from lack of health insurance, and the additional 40,000 who are expected to die once this goes into effect at the end of next year. It hits our economy. There's a huge ripple effect. And you did such a good job of describing so many of the ripple effects within the industry. Thank you, Chris. Thank you for that. Brian in Augusta, Michigan. Hey, Brian. Thanks for watching us on YouTube or Free Speech. What's up?
Hello. Good day, Tom. Thank you for taking my call.
Sure.
I want to bring your listeners' attention to an item of great importance to understanding the Republican agenda of broadening cyber surveillance and destroying our privacy online. It's Michigan House Bill 4938, called the Anti-Corruption of Public Morals Act, which is a misleading name for an all-out ban on using VPNs. It seeks to paint anyone using a virtual private network as suspicious or criminal, banning VPNs entirely. Yeah, using the veil of an anti-pornography measure. It would actually destroy a common practice for remote work, like anyone working from home per company policy, while also destroying the final means of private communication online.
Wow.
It would enable tools for the ultimate surveillance of our internet usage.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's incredible. I can't imagine. I mean, Russia outlaws VPNs. I mean, I don't know why we are. Louise and I were out of the country for part of our anniversary, and we had to use a VPN so that she could watch her show on Netflix. I mean, it's like you've got to. How do you, if you're out of the country? VPNs are so useful. Plus they keep your information private from your ISP so that they can't, because now, Brendan Carr, or maybe it was Ajit Pai actually before him, wasn't it, who did away with net neutrality. So now your internet service provider can read everything you're doing anyway, and this prevents that from happening. I mean, this is just nuts.
Correct. And there is another component to it, too. Of course, people do use VPNs for some unscrupulous things, but I also just wanted to point some listeners to more insight on this topic. I'd like to recommend a book by Polina Borsuk called Cyber Selfish, published in the year 2000.
Missed my opening rant today? It's usually published over at HartmannReport.com, where you can read it and share it with your friends for free. Check it out, HartmannReport.com. Welcome back. 23 minutes past the hour. So, negating Citizens United with the Montana plan. This is pretty cool. First of all, this is a constitutional amendment to the Constitution of Montana. Montana is a relatively small state. I mean, it's physically fairly large, but population-wise, it's quite small. And the vast majority of Montanans appear to be in support of this. The vast majority of Americans are in support of getting money out of politics. And Jeff Mangan is the leader of the Montana plan. It's also known as the Transparent Election Initiative. And he's a former Montana legislator. He used to be the Commissioner of Political Practices for the state. He's been working on this for a year or so. Finally got it on the ballot for next year. We'll see in 12 months, but I think it's worth talking about right now. It uses the state's authority. I talked about this a little bit yesterday. Corporations are chartered, that is brought into existence, birthed by state governments, by and large. There's a handful of federal corporations that are created by the federal government for specific purposes, like Amtrak, for example, but or the Savings and Loan, Insurance Corporation. I mean, these are all federally chartered corporations, but most are brought into power by the state, and the state has the ability to regulate what a corporation does. States could pass laws saying that corporations have to disclose if they're going to sell ice cream, or they have to. They have to operate within certain ethical boundaries, or they have to, have specific priorities, or whatever. I mean, if it's not a clear violation of the Constitution, a state can require a corporation to behave in a particular way. And state laws on corporations can be fairly restrictive. They are in Michigan and California. We've created corporations in both those states. And they're fairly loose in Delaware, which is why more than half of all the companies in the New York Stock Exchange are incorporated in Delaware, because in Delaware it just says, you can do anything that's legal in Delaware. So what Montana will do with this amendment to their Constitution is they will say, if you are a corporation incorporated in the state of Montana or doing business in the state of Montana, because even if you're a Delaware corporation, if you do business in Montana, you have to file, a doing business as, a DBA, with the state as a foreign corporation to operate in the state. Then you may not give money to political campaigns and politicians. And I mean, this is, and in fact, it says foreign entities that are authorized to transact business or otherwise transacting business or hold property in Montana. Any foreign entity that directly or indirectly undertakes, finances, or directs election activity or ballot issue activity in the state of Montana is conclusively deemed to be transacting business in this state. So basically, it's going to get all corporate money out of the state. It's not going to stop billionaires from giving money to politicians. That's still legal under Citizens United. So this is only half the battle, maybe not even half, because an awful lot of this money is coming from billionaires. But at least in terms of influencing the Montana legislature, billionaires tend to be more ideological than corporate Senate. Although some are, will be out there giving donations on behalf of their corporation, but maybe those can be challenged. So keep your eye on this thing. And in your state, if you have any contact with your state legislators, or if you're a regular visitor to your state Democratic Party, which we all should be, then bring it up. Ask, why aren't we doing what Montana's doing? We should be doing that here in Oregon. You should be doing that in Wisconsin. You should be doing that in Michigan. You should be doing that in Indiana, or whatever. Red state, Montana's a red state, and it's probably going to pass. So check it out.
You're listening to the Thom Hartmann Program. Call 202-808-9925.
All that said, what's on your mind? I'll pick up your calls right after this. book today in the Thom Hartmann Book Club is the second, Race and Guns in a Fatally Unequal America by Carol Anderson. This is from the introduction. It was like a snuff film, that July 6th, 2016 live stream. Philando Castile sat in his car, buckled in, bleeding, dying. "Why did you shoot him, sir?" asked his fiancée, Diamond Reynolds, pain piercing her every word. Castile, who had been pulled over in a suburb of St. Paul, Minnesota, because his, quote, wide-set nose, end quote, supposedly resembled that of a robbery suspect, had been reaching for his ID, but in order to avoid any surprises, let the police officer know he had a gun with him, a legally permitted, right-to-carry concealed gun. That was all the cop needed to know. Officer Geronimo Yanez began shooting. Castile's death came just one day after Alton Sterling's down in Louisiana. He, too, was carrying a gun, which was not unusual in this right-to-carry state. Granted, Sterling had a felony conviction, so owning a firearm was for him illegal, but he had been robbed before and wanted protection. On July 5th, 2016, the Baton Rouge police received a 911 call that there was a man with a weapon threatening customers at a local convenience store. As officers rolled onto the scene, they saw Sterling sitting there selling CDs and DVDs, just as the store owner allowed him to do and indeed welcomed. The threatening man was not Sterling. In fact, there was no threatening man. It had been a prank call, but that didn't matter. Within a few minutes, police had thrown the black man down, pinned him to the asphalt, and then started yelling that Sterling had a gun. He did. It was in his pocket where he could hardly reach it, what with the officers squatting on both his legs and one arm. Nevertheless, the police began firing round after round into his prone body, point blank. Blood poured out of his chest, but not for long. Alton Sterling was dead. The back-to-back deaths of these two black men police had shot for carrying guns should have jolted into action the Second Amendment's staunchest advocate, the National Rifle Association. In 1995, for example, the organization's denunciations flew fast and furious when it contended that law enforcement not only overreacted, but went out of its way to kill gun owners. Angered by the deaths at the Branch Davidian compound in Waco, Texas, and the siege and firefight at Ruby Ridge, Idaho, both of which were sparked by federal agents serving warrants for weapons violations, Wayne LaPierre, the NRA's executive vice president, angrily wrote, quote, "If you have a badge, you have the government's go-ahead to harass, intimidate, and even murder law-abiding citizens," end quote. He further denounced cops as, quote, "jackbooted government thugs who have more power to take away our constitutional rights, break in our doors, seize our guns, destroy our property, and even injure or kill us." Nearly 2 decades later, that sentiment had not changed. This was evident when Nevada rancher Cliven Bundy, who had refused to pay over $1 million in fees for grazing his cattle on public land, summoned his gun-toting, self-styled militiamen to battle with federal authorities to prevent the seizure of his herd for restitution. Richard Mack, a former recipient of the NRA's Law Enforcement Officer of the Year award, asserted, "If federal agents are going to start killing people, I'm sorry, but to show the world how ruthless these people are, women and children need to be placed in the front lines as human shields." Mack didn't flinch as he insisted, quote, "Women need to be the first ones shot. I would have put my own wife or daughter there on the front lines, and I would have been a screaming bloody murder to watch them die," end quote. Larry Pratt, a speaker at the NRA's 2014 National Convention, commenting on the fact that Bundy, quote, backed them, the Bureau of Land Management agents, down with automatic rifles and other deadly weaponry, proudly called that armed confrontation, quote, "a proper, legitimate, lawful response to illegitimate, unlawful exercise of government power, particularly on the federal level," end quote. Yet how quickly the NRA's swagger disappeared when government agents gunned down Philando Castile and Alton Sterling for merely carrying guns. Sterling's death didn't even merit acknowledgement. As for Castile, the NRA broke its silence only after inordinate pressure from African-American members led the gun manufacturers' lobby to issue a tepid statement that the Second Amendment was applicable, quote, regardless of race, religion, or sexual orientation. When pressed further by many of its members to stand up for Castile, the often fierce organization demurred, saying it was, quote, important for the NRA not to comment while the investigation is ongoing. This situational silence did not go unnoticed. The NRA had not only loudly defended the rights of those of the Branch Davidian cult and at Ruby Ridge, men who had actually shot and killed members of law enforcement, but the organization had also doubled down on calling for more guns in the face of mass shootings in a public school in Newtown, Connecticut, and a movie theater in Aurora, Colorado. Yet here, the guardian of the Second Amendment was now deliberately ignoring the inconvenient fact that black men had been killed for merely possessing a firearm. Where's the NRA? Asked journalist Hannah Kozlowska. Didn't Sterling and Philando Castile have Second Amendment rights too? David Graham in The Atlantic coolly observed that, quote, two shootings give a strong sense that the Second Amendment does not apply to black Americans the same way it does to white Americans, end quote. Washington Post columnist Eugene Robinson wrote that he saw the old Jim Crow whites only sign plastered above the Second Amendment. The book, The Second, by Carol Anderson. Share the Thom Hartmann program with your friends. Our podcast, The Hartmann Report, is absolutely free and available wherever fine podcasts are available. And the entire 3-hour podcast is available over at thomhartmann.com.
This Thanksgiving, we're here to say the Thom Hartmann crew thanks you every day for the calls you make, the thoughts you share, for the hope you bring and the fight you bear. You tune in strong, you stand up tall. Together we're answering democracy's call. This Thanksgiving, we're grateful it's true. The Thom Hartmann crew thanks you.
Welcome back. 35 minutes past the hour. Donald Trump just tweeted out, he says, there's a new word for a Trump Republican, which is almost everyone. It is T-Publican, T-E-P-U-B-L-I-C-A-N, or T-Publican without the E. He asked, and he has a question mark, and so Betty Bowers reposts that and says, how about Repiggy Can? I love it. I mean, you know, they cannot say the name, the actual name of the Democratic Party, right? Right-wing television, right-wing radio, and every Republican in Congress has been following Joe McCarthy's 1956 advice. Never say Democratic, never say Democratic Party, never say he's a member of the Democratic Party or the Democratic Party did this or should do that, because Democratic sounds nice. People like things that are Democratic. Instead, call it the... This is a quote from Joe McCarthy. Call it the Democrat Party with an emphasis on the rat. And that's what they all do, right? And, I mean, you literally can't. You turn on the Sunday shows and there'll be a Republican on there, and if he's referring to the Democratic Party, it'll be the Democrat Party. And there literally is no such thing. There's never been a Democrat Party in America. And the hosts never correct them. And they're slur. It's a slur. It's a slander against, one of the two political parties. Well, I think it's time for Democrats to start referring to the Republicans with a new name. Maybe the Republicans, thinking of Jeffrey Epstein. Yeah, it's kind of gross, pubes, yeah. Or the Repiggy Cans, I like that. That's a good one from Betty Bowers. Maybe you have other suggestions, so anyway. Jerry in Tampa, Florida. Hey, Jerry, what's on your mind today?
Hi, Tom. I'm going to have to go and get Attorney Haake's Substack on that. One thing I would bring up is the word to keep in mind legally is jurisdiction. They had a special judge rule on the dismissals of those cases so that the trial judge, if they found that there was jurisdiction, that's just the ability to hear the case, so that the other judges wouldn't be prejudiced. But that's exactly what happened. I'm sure that Attorney Haake and, say, Glenn Kirshner would agree with me that the judge ruled that because it was not the cases were not submitted to the grand jury and the indictments filed by a legally qualified attorney, the court have jurisdiction. didn't have the power to
In
hear
fact, he went on to say words to the effect of, you know, if this were allowed to continue, any old person could just walk in and convene a grand jury.
Exactly, and they could just keep going back to temporary attorneys ad infinitum.
Right, you can't do that.
And that flouts the law. The point is, Pam Bondi, if either one of those cases had merit, Pam Bondi really screwed up, because she has been the Attorney General for the past 6-7 months before any of this hit the fan, and so to speak, she let the cases sit on her desk. I mean, if she had set herself up to be Trump's lawyer, which they're not really contesting that, then she, if this had been a private case, she probably would have committed like malpractice.
Yeah.
She's the one who should have taken the cases to the grand jury herself. She could have done that if they really had merit. I'm not even.
Well, it would have had to be her rather. I mean, you know, it should have been the actual prosecutor in the federal prosecutor's office, but he refused to do it. I mean, this was the Trump appointee, Trump temporary appointee. In fact, he hadn't even gone through, you know, congressional certification, whatever the word is. You know, when the Senate says, yes, you're now an official, U.S. attorney, domini. But
yes, this is the point. That's the point. But she just basically mishandled the case on behalf of her client. If I got time, I just have something anecdotal. I keep driving by Hillsborough Avenue every day, and there's a business that has a large flagpole, and on that flagpole used to be both the American flag and the Trump flag. Well, all of a sudden, the Trump flag has now disappeared, and the owner has put up a Cuban flag, which leads me to believe he's not exactly a fan of Trump anymore.
So it's probably owned by a right-wing Cubano. Is that the word, or just Cuban?
Yes, Cubano, and the point being, it seems to me that this is an example of these kind of things that they get to people if it affects them personally.
Right.
I'll bet that somebody in his family or close friend or somebody has had a run-in with ICE, and now it's affecting him personally.
Yeah, or maybe one of his employees. Yeah, spot on. Or his customer base, for that matter. You know, if he's, yeah, good one. Jerry, thank you. Thanks for the story. Diane in Ann Arbor, Michigan. Hey, Diane, what's up?
Yes. Could anyone explain to me why they're surprised that Putin is back for more from Ukraine? They invaded Crimea, took it away. It's not theirs. They know it's not theirs, but they're holding it because they're the bully. Okay, so then they come back and they want more property of Ukraine the second time. We can't figure out why he keeps coming back, re-invading. Well, we give him what he wants.
Yeah.
I mean, and so here's the thing. Now in the 21st point in the peace plan, he wants Luhansk, Donetsk will be recognized as de facto Russian. He also included Crimea on that. So what he's saying is he wants a de facto that we say that Crimea is Russia.
He wants his seizures to be ratified internationally by the United States.
Why do he's going to come back for more. If he gets it, he'll come back for more. And we can't figure out why. And the definition
Obama should
of
have stood up to him. Biden should have been harsher.
But here's my point. They're not punishing him. They're rewarding him.
Yep. I agree.
And a de facto means not legally recognized. But
it means in fact.
It's officially. Well, it's something that isn't legally recognized.
No, de facto is Latin for in fact. You can say de jure, under the law,
or legally.
But under de facto would be, this is what's going on.
But But why are we so surprised he's doing this over and over? They want to stop it, but they're reporting. They're feeding the monster.
Yeah, now I understand your point. You're saying he has de facto control over these parts, but not de jure control. He doesn't have legal control.
But he wants it official.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right, Diane.
But why is it a surprise?
Well, it's not a surprise to me.
Well, or me either. But what's the problem with our fearless leaders?
Well, Trump has been a Russian asset since the 1980s. He's I don't think that Trump is working for America. I am increasingly convinced that Donald Trump has at least since 2015 and probably since the 1980s, particularly given the huge Russian presence in Trump Tower over the years, that he's been working for the Russians forever. We've got a Russian, we've got a Manchurian candidate in the White House.
But why isn't Ukraine fighting this? Because Crimea is added bonus.
Oh, I think they are fighting it.
I haven't heard anything.
Oh,
that's a port.
Yeah. I mean, they're being pounded. They're being pounded, and without American help, which we're withholding. We've been withholding now for a year.
Well, then where is Europe and Scandinavia and all of them?
They just don't have enough military power right now, I guess. I don't have any easy answers for you, Diane, but and we just have to I have great faith and trust in President Zelensky. He's a good man, and he's going to do what is best for his country, and it may be what he has to do, doesn't want to do. But I think the most important thing that we can be doing, since really what Ukraine needs is American weaponry, is calling our members of Congress and demanding that they contact the White House and demand that Trump sell those weapons to Ukraine or to Europe to give to Ukraine. I mean, Zelensky came over here with $16 billion from Europe to buy air defense systems, and Trump was supposed to sell them, and he refused to. So Diane, we should let people know.
Hartmann. Visit TomHartmann.com for audio and video archives.
It's time for America to stand up with our allies, like Ukraine. 45 minutes past the hour. We'll be right back. And welcome back. Bill in Sun City, Arizona. Hey, Bill, what's up? Bill in Sun City, watching Free Speech TV. I'm not hearing you. If you're talking, you've got your phone on mute. Going once, going twice. Scott in Gresham, Oregon. Hey, Scott, what's on your mind today?
Hey, Tom. Thanks for all you do, and happy Thanksgiving.
Thank you. Back at you, Scott.
I wanted to switch gears a little bit and mention something you may or may not have heard of. It's a company called YASA, Y-A-S-A.
Mm-hmm.
And they've developed a axial flux motor versus a radial flux motor like what's used in your car, in your hybrid.
Are you talking electric motor?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So I know what radial flux is. It's where you've got the coils, the magnetic coils around basically a set of fixed permanent magnets, and you alter the magnetic field rapidly, and it draws the permanent magnets around. What's an axial? How does that work?
Basically, it eliminates the iron core of a induction motor, and the flux of the current is axial to the shaft or the rotor instead of a radial flux. So picture a 13-inch pizza, 3.5 inches in diameter and weighing 29 pounds and producing 400 horsepower.
Whoa.
Yeah. Mercedes-Benz bought this company, I think in 2021, and they're in full production right now in England, mainly for high what do you call them, high-performance vehicles like Lamborghini.
Right. So what's the advantage of this motor? Is it, I mean, you know, electric motors, standard ones are really efficient. Oh, it's smaller and lighter weight.
Exactly. You could put 4. You could put 1 on each. So
put 1 on each wheel, yeah.
Exactly, and it's about the same diameter as a brake pad.
Wow. Amazing.
So, and yeah, 28 pounds, or 28.8 pounds.
Yeah.
And I just thought, when you get a chance over the weekend or over the holiday, just look it up, YASA.
Yeah.
And I think it stands for yokeless segmented armature. And here's the great kicker. It doesn't use any rare earth elements.
Oh, that's interesting.
It uses ferrite magnets.
Just good old-fashioned iron.
Exactly.
Iron-based. You know.
Iron and copper, and that's pretty much the only materials. Well, other than the aluminum housing, it's oil-cooled continuously. So
interesting.
But it's amazing. Amazing technology. I thought I'd end your show with that.
Well, thank you, Scott. Thanks for that. I appreciate it. Great to hear from you.
Have a great Thanksgiving.
Thank you. Back at you and your family. Thank you. There in Gresham. It's 49 minutes past the hour. I'll be back with you in 60 seconds. Hey, Thom Hartmann here. KBCS is hosting me out at Town Hall Seattle with special guest Katie Wilson on Saturday, December 6th. I'll be discussing my new book, The Last American President, speaking to the day's most pressing issues, and have a Q&A and book signing. You can get tickets now at kbcs.fm. See you there. Tag You're It. From Los Angeles to Columbia, South Carolina, from Birmingham, Alabama to Baltimore, universal basic income programs are chalking up proof after proof of their viability. Basically, just giving people, low-income people, poor people, somewhere between $500 and $1,500 a month, no strings attached, is lifting people out of poverty, getting them back on track, getting them into solid middle-class jobs, helping their children tremendously. This works. Now, we don't have to do UBI in the United States. We're the only developed country in the world that doesn't have a national health care program. Health expenses are whacking a lot of low-income people. We're the only developed country in the world that doesn't have free college education. Education expenses are whacking people. There's a lot we could do. We can subsidize housing. We can subsidize food. We do that with food stamps. We could expand it. There's a lot we could do to benefit from this. There's a whole report about that over at hartmanreport.com. Check it out. Welcome back. 10 minutes before the hour. Picking up your calls here. Lena in Central Kansas. Hey, Lena, what's on your mind today?
Well, finally, I've been wondering if the ICE people could be some of the Capitol rioters from January 6th.
I would bet many of them are.
Trump pardoned several hundred of them.
Mm-hmm. Over 1,000.
So maybe he hired them for ICE.
Mm-hmm.
And they would do anything that Trump asked them to, even if it was violent.
Yep.
And maybe Trump has told them to hide their faces because he doesn't want any of them recognized as someone that was rioting at the Capitol.
I think there's a very high probability that the reason these guys are wearing masks is not the reason that they're putting out there, which is that they're afraid of being doxxed, but is what you're saying or a variation on what you're saying, and that is that many of them are being drawn from the ranks of the Ku Klux Klan, the Three Percenters, the Proud Boys, and the convicts from January 6th, and they don't want to be recognized because the agency itself could be embarrassed by the kind of people it's hiring. I agree with you, Lena.
Yes. And I haven't heard anyone else talk about this, and I was just wondering if you had thought of that.
I have thought about it. I've never written about it or talked about it, and you're right, and we should be talking about it more. You know, why are these guys wearing
I don't
these
know
masks?
what we're going to do about it, but if people are aware of it, maybe they could figure out something to do.
Well, I think, you know, masked police is just so un-American. It's
Yes,
amazing.
It reminds you of all the terrorist groups that you've seen on video.
Yeah, who wears masks?
On TV.
ISIS?
Yeah.
ISIS, Hamas,
always wore masks.
and now ICE. Lena, I got to move along, but thank you. That was a brilliant contribution to the program. Thank you. Maria in Philadelphia. Hey, Maria, what's up?
Hi there, Tom. So I have names you could use for the. Can you hear me? Okay.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, I have names for Republicans. I call them repugnant Nazis or just repugnants.
Repugnants. Yeah, I've heard that.
Repugnant Nazis. I call them that too.
Repugnant Nazis?
Repugnant Nazis.
Repugnant Nazis. That's a good one.
Yeah.
That's a good one.
Anyway, and speaking of repugnant, so you probably know who this writer is. His last name always has to look at it.
Hardis?
So he has written something for the New York Times. I think it's in today. I'm not sure when it was in, but I do know I watched Democracy Now! On YouTube. And, you know, in general, it has to do with Epstein, but his primary point was these extremely wealthy people, after reading, he went through all the emails, the condescension, the denigration they have towards everyday people globally, because these people, the comment he made in his point was, these people govern us globally. They control what happens in our lives. They are the ones that are making our lives extremely difficult, so you can't afford anything. They're the ones that are doing this to us, and they are getting away with this. And even after they know even if they never were around what this guy did before, the fact that they were still communicating with him after he was found guilty of doing the horrifying things that he was doing to these girls, and they were children and women too, but children, okay? They were still communicating with him, like that Larry Summers guy. Like the anonymous comment was he's like a 9-year-old boy asking daddy for dating advice.
Right, on how to get into the pants of the woman who was working for him.
Yes, and he's married, by the way. Of course, that doesn't marry these people, but in general, just you have to watch this. Just watch the entire interview with I forget what her name is, Ann Goodman. I forget what her first name is. But,
Amy Goodman. Yeah, I've known her for
Goodman.
years.
You have. I mean, I saw it's recorded, so I saw it on YouTube. But just have to listen to some of the people he commented on that were in these emails, so it is public.
No, his pieces, I thought it was in the Atlanta, maybe it is the New York Times, but his piece is
in the New York Times.
Okay, his piece is pretty explicit, with quotes, complete with quotes. So
I didn't read it because I don't subscribe to the New York Times, and I have my reasons for it. But I mean, just listening to what he said on Democracy Now!
I'll check it out. Maria, I want to try and get one last call in here before the week is out. Thank you so much for the call. Jim in West Alley, Wisconsin. Hey, Jim, what's on your mind today? You have the last minute, so I hope you're quick.
Well, I wanted to get your thoughts on an idea I had that maybe Democrats aren't fighting so hard on this Trump administration because they're all millionaires too, and you said yourself they make out when there's downturns. And if this was a Democratic administration doing a thumbnail of what Trump has done, they'd be raising holy hell across the country.
The Democrats are raising holy hell. It's just that they don't have this giant media machine that the Republicans have, with 4 television networks, almost 300 television stations, 1,500 right-wing radio stations, podcasters that they subsidize. It's just insane. Jim, thank you for the call. Thank you for being with us this week. We'll be back next week. I suppose I should be doing my thank you list here for the week, shouldn't I? Special thanks to Louise Hartman, Sean Taylor, Nate Atwell, Jamie Holly, Nigel Peacock, Sue Nethercutt, Patrick Hoyt, Geraldine Halbert, Ron Hartenbaum, Chase Spross, Nicholas Miller, Pat Sweeney, Jeremy Peterson, Connor Arroyo, Carmen Verde, Martha Salinas, Mateo Robertson, Diane Russell, and Ruben Michaels. And to you, thank you so much for being with us. Get out there, get active, tag you're it. Have a wonderful holiday weekend, and I'll catch up with you on Monday.
You've been listening to Thom Hartmann. For audio and video archives, visit TomHartmann.com.
In addition to bringing you the Thom Hartmann program here on Free Speech TV and Video Media Online, we also have a whole set of ways you can interact with us and tools you can use to spread the word about the importance of democracy and the threats to it in our republic. First, there's your daily homework. Sue Nethercutt puts together a daily email newsletter that has a link to every story I discuss on the air, so you can find my sources and you can share them with your friends. It's free and you can sign up at TomHartmann.com. Second, I publish my daily take every day over at the HartmannReport.com website. That's also free if you want the daily 5 days a week rant in your inbox. No ads either. Third, we have the podcasts. There's the free 1-hour version of our daily show that's advertising supported. You can find that wherever you get your podcasts normally. And then there's also the podcast of the entire 3-hour show with no advertisements, and that's available by subscription over at TomHartmann.com. So check them all out at TomHartmann.com and HartmannReport.com.
We say fight back!